Oh my god. Wait, what? Wrong room. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Okay. We're here. Dandy crew, welcome on in. Welcome. Yes. Oneesan pressed the wrong buttons. Ghost streamer. Wow, professional streamer. Amazing. But yeah, let me just replay that alert here. Why are my alerts not showing? Um Ducks. Give me my alerts. Give me my alerts. There we go. Dandy fall. There we go. There's the raid. There's the raid. 78 viewers. Thank you so much, Dandy, for the raid. And welcome me. I can't have words right now. And bring your lovely community here. I hope you had a fun stream. Obviously, I know exactly what you were up to, and I had a lot of fun playing with you and the other girls, and of course, manager's son. So really fun. I'm getting some food in me too. I'm hella hungry. I grabbed some snacks. We got some mini cucumbers, some Uncrustables, and a croissant. Croissant. Man, Nal would be upset if I had brought up the fact that I have a croissant. I don't know why, but he gets so upset when we bring up any of the French stuff. I don't know why. Je ne sais quoi. You know? Or something like that. I speak a little bit of French. Je parle un petit peu français. What Uncrustable? Of course, the Smucker's strawberry jam and peanut butter strawberry jam Uncrustables. Good stuff. Unfortunately, they don't have. They only have that one at Costco. I'm not a fan of the grape one as much, anyways. But like, oh my god, have you ever tried Nutella Uncrustables? They are like crack cocaine. They are like crack cocaine, is what they are like. They're very easily very addicting. The Nutella Uncrustables. Like, I feel like they have no right to exist, but I'm very glad that they do. You know? I'm very glad that they do. Extremely grateful. It's so good. I dream of those, you know? I dream of those. But yeah, we're gonna hang out. We're gonna watch some Warhammer lore because we got a Warhammer game to play probably tomorrow. Maybe we'll start some of it today. I need to download it in the meantime because the Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 has come out, and this has been a very hyped game for a long time. And I've been wanting to dip my feet into Warhammer for quite some time. I have quite a few friends who enjoy minifigure painting or the games or just the lore of it and stuff. So we're blessed be yeah, blessed be the Omnisci. I know probably more just about Chaos Gods than I do anything else, and that's about it. So, and yeah. So let's try to learn some more so people won't think that I'm a heretic when we're playing. Yeah. Tech Priest, one of our lovely mods, Tech Priest Daka, I think he might be sleeping or something right now, has given me a wonderful playlist of lore videos for us to watch. It's really good beginner lore, and all these videos are by Luitin09. We've got yeah, right to the God Emperor. Yeah, we're gonna do some Warhammer. Yeah. Wham. Let me open up the video here. Oh, there. I gotta pause that and then full screen it. And then we're gonna go over here, I think. Do I press the right button? I did press the right button. However, I'm not sure if, hopefully me being in the corner will be fine. Hopefully this will be fine. We'll see if there's any like subtitles or anything, but we should be good. I'm gonna turn off our BGM so we can just listen and munch on some snacks and enjoy. Yes, yes. Wow, sponsored. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. I'm the fist clenched tight and ceramite, smashing with the force of a legion. I'm the blade awaiting my foe's flesh, as keen as the Emperor could make me. I am the bolt fired from afar, an end to all who stand before the Imperium of Man. Welcome. Hey, Angelina. Thank you so much, Lena, for the raid. Welcome on in. I hope you had fun, because I had a lot of fun playing playing Chain together with you, and I hope we get to do more things together. Feel free to message me anytime, and thank you so much for the raid. Welcome in, raiders. You probably saw me before, but hello! My name is Ayumi, your virtual Oneesan. I probably should have done this introduction for Dandy as well here, but I was just like, oh, overwhelmed a little. I was whelmed. But yeah, thank you for the fish raid. I had fun. Let me know if you ever need like a collab partner for anything, or just want to hang out and stuff. We're gonna watch some Warhammer lore, because there's a new Warhammer game out, and we're probably gonna play that tomorrow. But I need to know the lore, because I don't want to feel dumb while playing the game. So we're starting on our Warhammer 40k lore journey here. Make sure you rest up and get something to eat too. I know Dandy was super hungry, so. Okay. To the lore. We just started. Wow. Well, I won't be playing the game today. I'll be playing it tomorrow.
Now, if you're joining me today for this video, it's likely for two reasons. Either you're relatively new to 40k and the Astartes, the legendary elites of the Imperium, the Space Marines, or you're here for me making an overview opening of the most iconic of Imperial forces. The other option is you're one of those people who's here to sleep as I talk. That is fine too. Lutin Sleep Club. I should say that for myself, about a year ago, I thought about diving in, looking at individual chapters of the Space Marines, their background, their history, their differences, and organisation. It's been requested a lot. In honesty, though, the prospect of doing this justice,
unless you got the pre-release, I have it. We're gonna play it tomorrow.
Was actually
I got the pre-release version.
Becoming so high of a mountain to climb in my mind, it felt almost insurmountable. I think, though, it's always true, because I do this myself. No matter if you're new to the lore or a veteran, it always can be helpful to periodically strengthen the outlines of general things we know. In the case of the Astartes and their chapters, I think this will personally help overcome for me what seemed a daunting prospect before launching into specifics. We'll touch on today also a few details in the next section about the Astartes' creation. Yeah, I can't be able to play today,
but I want to do my lore first.
Principles, things like this, just to build a complete picture. So, let's do that.
Deep dive, let's go!
The origin of the Space Marines, the Astartes, is well known and a fundamental keystone for the 40k verse. In the aftermath of humanity's collapse from the age of technology, it was so weakened that it was almost completely destroyed by the isolation and warp horrors that ravaged it through the Age of Strife. The figure who would soon become known as the Emperor would emerge during this time upon Old Earth, Terra, to reunite humanity once more, destroying the warlords who had been left fighting pointless territorial skirmishes in the dust and decay of a dying world. In order to overcome these apocalyptic but still often powerful armies of the warlords, many of whom were strange warriors who had survived the collapse but augmented themselves with technology, cybernetic super warriors addicted to generations of warring in the decaying remains of a golden age. To overcome these, the Emperor forged his own heavily augmented transhumans, the Thunder Warriors. But they were far from perfect, a hastily crafted, extremely overpowered version of what would be later refined. The Thunder Warriors were impressive, but unstable. In this period, the Emperor had been rounding up genetic scientists and those who retained abilities of importance from the age of technology. He would use these recruited scientists to create his biotechnical department within his fortress complex on Terra. Deep in the underground depths of the palace, he would
There's so
forge
much good
the
art
Primarchs,
with Warhammer.
20 individuals who were far beyond mere transhuman. These were demigods, beings you could barely call human, such were their great powers and potential. Unlike the tech priests of Mars, the Emperor had walked through the mists of time. He traversed human history, and consequently, he was not so restrained by dogma and the surviving cults of Mars. This is what enabled him to employ the advanced sciences that remained from the golden technology age of humanity to develop the Primarchs and Astartes project. The Primarchs were each imbued with gifts that reflected a fraction of the Emperor's complete power. But as this ambitious project neared completion...
Man, I just gotta say, there's already like a lot of words I don't know what they mean, kind of thing. I'm like, what's that? What's that? What's that? As I'm going around. I'm sure like things will slowly fill in as I watch more videos and stuff like that, but I'm already like, okay. I'll listen. I'll try to take this in as much as I can, but
Primarchs were taken, scattered throughout the galaxy. The
There's
exact and definitive cause of this disaster remains open to debate. Some suspect the malicious powers of the warp, others close to the Emperor during this time have claimed responsibility. Ultimately, these are just details that in the broader context have little importance 10,000 years into the future.
There.
The Emperor would, using the base genetics of his Primarchs, continue in the development of the very first Astartes. The Thunder Warriors' power but also instability appeared to be caused in part by the fact that they were adapted as adult males. The process was both highly invasive and traumatic physically and mentally. The Space Marines who would follow would be developed differently and implanted as young boys. This meant their augmentations would grow in with their normal maturation and not a traumatic hard cut, as was the case previously. Astartes have as many as 22 specially implanted or augmented organs within their bodies. These all enhance their survival and capability. During this process of their creation, they will also undergo both mental and physical strengthening, often accompanied with further imperial indoctrination. Their gene seed, though, remains the most critical in setting an Astartes apart from a mere augmented human or cybernetic warrior. These glands in the neck and chest contain the blueprints for the Astartes Legion and Chapter heritage, and are painstakingly recovered from dead Marines to ensure their security and, more importantly, the genetic stability of a chapter. Of all the other implants or augments, another particularly noteworthy piece is of course their black carapace. This is one of the most difficult things to develop and implement. The continual failure of its implementation during the Astartes development threatened to undermine the entire project. But finally, the gene wrights and scientists working with the Emperor were able to successfully develop the carapace to embed without rejection for Space Marines. This critical system is meshed below their skin to enable uplink nodes which are meshed directly into their nervous system. Their purpose is so the Astartes may interact with powered armoured suits of any design, so they may move as if the armour were their own body without limitation of movement or reaction time. Ordinary humans such as Inquisitors and the Sororitas can wear scaled versions of power armour, even Terminator armour, but without the black carapace, these can be bulky and less effective than they are for Marines. As such, they may be balanced to be slightly less durable but enable more movement for the wearers. Powered armour in and of itself is not the creation of the Emperor, although he did perfect and design master level armour for the likes of his Custodes and Primarchs, and various iterations were made of course for the Space Marines over the years. In the early development of the Space Marines project, the Emperor created, based on his own genetic template, among other things those 20 Primarchs, and they were the basis of the first founding of Astartes. Each would in time bear the iconography and colours that identify them in line with their Primarchs. All this had been carefully
There's so many
planned
words
by
I
the Emperor
don't
and his
understand. Brain go burr. Should we try to look up and see if there's like truly like a Warhammer for beginners before I start these. Big word, funny space magic. Exactly. Exactly. I'm just gonna see if there's some sort of precursor video I can watch to this. Like Warhammer 40k for dummies. Yeah. What is Warhammer? A total beginner guide. Okay. Warhammer 40k lore in a minute. Okay. And what else we got? What else we got? What else we got? Let me. That's weird. Why didn't you give me this one? There's like this one's called "What the fuck is 40k? Beginner's Guide plus all factions." So we can try that one too. Let's look at the funny ones first. Not that one.
What?
Not that one's 9 minutes. That one's 22 minutes. This one. That's the one in a minute. Yeah, this is the one we want. This one had funny looking stuff. Give me a sec. Wham wham. More in a minute! Let's go! About a
Our story
minute.
begins with a godlike being of immense power known only as the Emperor, uniting the warring factions of Earth and embarking on the Great Crusade to reunite all of mankind's lost colonies. He did this by creating 20 legions of post-human genetically engineered badasses known as Space Marines, each with an even more ridiculously OP Primarch to lead them. Well, unfortunately, the four gods of chaos, who weren't really into that sort of thing, intervened and scattered the Primarchs across the universe while still in their infancy. Rather annoyed by this, the Emperor led the legions across the galaxy, reclaiming, subjugating, or annihilating every world they could find, gradually picking up the lost Primarchs along the way. Eventually, the Emperor decided there were more important things to do and retired from his career of galaxy plundering to go and muck about with ancient science back on Earth, leaving his favourite Primarch Horus in command of the Crusade. All was going well until the chaos-tainted chaplain Erebus engineered a plot in which Horus would also fall to chaos.
He fell to
pretty
chaos.
serious daddy issues. Horus gathered half the Space Marine legions to his side and set about waging civil war against the Emperor. This conflict would be known as the Horus heresy and culminated in a massive invasion of Earth. The Emperor, knowing his forces were outnumbered and on the verge of losing the battle, teleported to Horus's flagship to engage him in mortal combat. But being a sentimental old sod, could not bring himself to kill his favourite son. Horus, having no such qualms, beat the snot out of him. Finally, seeing sense, the Emperor killed him with mind bullets and the Loyalists were victorious. Near death, the Emperor was placed in a huge machine known as the Golden Throne, which maintained his psychic essence at the bargain price of the souls of 1,000 unlucky sods every single day. The Imperium fell into a state of technological regression and brutal dictatorship, and for 10,000 years has been under siege from all sides by every single nasty the universe can throw at it. Basically, life sucks. There's only war, and you're probably going to get eaten by Tyranids. Have fun.
Okay. Every day. 1,000 every day. Wow. The Emperor be hungry. Okay, now we're gonna move on. Okay, we did the lore in a minute. Now we're gonna move on to lore in about 9 minutes. Okay, we're slowly scaling up. We're scaling up the lore. Okay, we're scaling up.
Is Warhammer. Warhammer is a tabletop game using figures where you purchase, make, personalize, and paint your army. The goal of the game is to defeat the models, the army of your friend. The rules are extensive, but easy to learn. Your army is yours from boots to blasters. No two are identical, and this is the core of the fun. Like most pastimes, it can fill many needs: expression, painting, collecting, camaraderie, events, excitement. But where Warhammer positively glows is in its deep and rich history. With hundreds of books, novellas, dramas, audio books, a movie, and entire animated series now.
No,
on
wait.
Warhammer Plus,
It's
it is a universe with a
showing
depth
Warhammer
and flavor
in general.
like no other. One can get utterly lost for years in the expansive world of Warhammer. Its lore is so deep and darkly delicious. The universe has many miniature games to cover every scale you could hope for. Dogfights, fleet actions, gang brawls, violent sports, and even apocalyptic battles. Yet the two main games have been fantasy, both in a Tolkien meets medieval Europe setting, and a new one called Age of Sigmar. But the other game, the most famous, and what probably brought you here, is Warhammer 40,000. Or 40k as they say, my speciality. Many have tried to emulate it, none have succeeded. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. The setting takes place 38,000 years in the future, a sci-fi like no other, as it is the story of Paradise Lost. The bright hope for an enlightened future squandered and destroyed, replaced by the Orwellian boots smashing down on the face of humanity again and again. There is nothing but obedience to the state, no future but death of overwork or on a battlefield. It is the tale of a crippled King Arthur, decaying on his golden throne, awaiting a knight to bring him a cure from a grail. Like Arthur, the Emperor of Mankind was betrayed by his own son, the greatest of the Primarchs, Horus Lupercal, who led his heretical rebellion and was killed by the Emperor, but destroyed his father in return. The Emperor of Mankind is the center of the Imperium, his story long, but his duties never-ending. Immortal, for 10,000 years has he sat atop the golden throne, every moment excruciating, endless pain. Yet without his efforts, there would be no travel between the stars, and humanity would be consumed. For in the dark of space lurks threats aplenty, each a race of terrible power, and often dark intent. Yet it is also the gods of chaos who are the real threat to the Imperium, the enemy within the gate. For chaos can spring from any human, but from the gifted most of all. The Primarchs disappeared, then drifted from history into legend, but now two have returned, 10,000 years later, and their twisted brethren of evil return at their advent, interested in the material realms once more. So we set the stage of the universe, where there is only war. And any battle game needs to have armies, so let me give you the briefest rundown of those available. The Adeptus Custodes, the ultimate golden-clad warriors beyond even the Space Marines. They are the bodyguards of the Emperor and his throne. The Space Marines.
Space Marines!
The Legiones Astartes. The genetically enhanced super soldiers who wear power armor and carry weapons of terrifying destructive potence.
Can I do Sigma face? Wait. That's as close as I can get. That's as close as I can get. You got Sigma neck.
As own angels of death. The Adeptus Sororitas, Sisters of Battle, a religious order of pious warriors who fear nothing, as their faith fills their hearts with courage. The Astrum Militarum, the Imperial Guard, baseline human conscripts, trillions in number. Where the Astartes fight the hardest battles, it is the Imperial Guard who wins the wars. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the tech priests of Mars, in a time where technology is shrouded in pseudo-religious mystery. They hunt for lost technology, but fear innovation. The Imperial Knights, the pilots of huge mechs. Like Colossi, they bestride the battlefields of the 41st millennium. The Adeptus Titanicus, piloting the true god machines of war. These titans dwarf even the knights. They can flatten entire cities in hours. The Inquisition, the hunters of evil in all its forms, be it witches, mutants, traitors, or the unclean denizens of the warp. The Leagues of Votan, dwarfs in space. Rugged and doughty, they exist in the high-gravity realm at the center of the galaxy, allied directly with none. Still, they are semi-human. The forces of chaos. Demons of all four gods are both powerful and vicious, but in entirely different ways. The demons of Nurgle, the plague god, are addled with infections, the gifts of their dark deity. The demons of Tzeentch, the god of plot, scheme, and sorcery. His minions wield magic as potent as any found in fiction. The demons of Slaanesh, the prince of pleasure, the lord of excess. Sex, drugs, and fixation are his curses, one his followers share with any foolish enough to succumb. The demons of Khorne, the blood god, lord of skulls. Khorne is the god of combat,
for the blood
and
god.
cares not from whence the blood flows, as long as it flows. The traitor Marines, the ancient survivors of the 9 evil legions that fought the Horus heresy. The Dark Mechanicum, and traitor legions of knights and titans, twisted beyond consideration of morality nor decency. Yet there are also aliens in this galaxy. Most hell-bent on the destruction of humanity, they are called the Xenos. The Eldari, ancient and powerful, yet now almost extinct. Space elves. Yet they have a dark kin, the Drukhari, who live off the suffering of other sentient life. The Orcs, greenskins and aggressive, as in most settings, yet the Orcs of Warhammer are the comedy relief. Let that sink in. The Tau Empire, a young race and advanced. They ride battlesuits and naively fight for a mythic greater good. The undying legions of the soulless Necrons,
Ooh,
who
Necrons.
sacrificed their souls in exchange for immortality, awoken again to terrorize the galaxy anew. And finally, the Tyranids and their gene-stealer cults, a bug race that assails the
Bugs.
galaxy from all sides.
Bugs
with
are,
fleets and
I
hordes
swear,
uncountable.
is there any IPs that make bugs good guys? Because, like, I feel like every single space fantasy, sci-fi fantasy, bugs are always bad, right? There's always, like, a bad race of bugs. Like, I think the only one would be, like, it's always bad bugs, like, right? It's always bad bugs. Bugs are always the bad guy. Anime, maybe? I mean, some anime, but like for the like main series, like we think about like, you know, like like even Destiny, what's the other one that we play? Helldivers. What's another IP? They always make bugs the enemy, right? Bugs do make for a good enemy, right? We're just like squash him. I'm doing my part. I'm just wondering if there's anything that, like, you know, makes bugs a good guy. I don't think there really is. I don't think there really is. Can't think of one. Like, I don't hate bugs. I don't like bugs either, but, you know, it'd be nice to see some variation. Like, bugs got a bad rep in the fantasy sci-fi sphere.
Uncountable. They consume all in their path and send their outriders, the gene stealers, to inveigle themselves within human society to weaken them before the High Fleets proper arrive. This is just the beginning, gentle listener. I have released over 500
What are you talking about? Isn't the Emperor a good guy? What do you mean no good guys in Warhammer?
Those explaining elements of the setting, and I believe I have only scratched the surface. Because Warhammer is the gift that keeps on giving. It has all that you require, but can be dipped into with ease. And I am Voldemort, your guide to the world of
Dipped into with ease my ass, just saying.
Warhammer. And I have only one question for you. In the grim darkness of the far future,
Good, you?
exactly how much do you really want to know?
How much do I want to know? Oh, I see.
And a flavor piece to end the video on. Something a bit closer to my usual fare. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind. By the might of his inexhaustible armies, 1,000,000 worlds stand against the dark. Yet, he is a rotting carcass. The carrion lord of the Imperium, held in life by marvels from the dark age of technology, and the 1,000 souls sacrificed each day, so that his may continue to burn. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. It is to suffer an eternity of carnage and slaughter. It is to have cries of anguish and sorrow drowned by the thirsting laughter of dark gods. This is a dark
Oh
and
yeah, I
terrible
was
era
having cucumber.
where you
That
will
was the
find
crunchies.
little comfort or hope. Forget the power of technology and science. Forget the promise of progress and advancement. Forget any notion of common humanity or compassion. There is no peace amongst the stars. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only
War.
war.
Yeah, war. I was right. I figured there'd only be war. War never changes. Thank you for the fall avoidance. We're gonna launch into a 22-minute video next. We're slowly doing more. This is what the fuck is Warhammer 40k Explain Full Beginner's Guide plus every major faction lore plus history. So here we go into that was a 9-minute video we did previously. We started with a 1-minute video on lore, and now we're going into the 22-minute video. We doing this. In the grim darkness of the far future, there's only war. I think this is just the intro he does for every single thing. Yeah, I think so. We read this one already. Wait, no, did we? Yeah, we did. Volney Barkswell, thank you for the follow, and Voides as well.
Welcome to the first in my series of primers focused on the universe of Warhammer 40,000. If you're watching this, you may well be brand new to the all-encompassing hobby we call 40k. But what is it? What's it all about, and why should you consider looking into it any further? Well, for one reason, in recent times, people's appetites have been reawakened to highly immersive TV series like Game of Thrones, or movie franchises with a decent backstory. 40k goes considerably far beyond these examples. It is one of the biggest miniature wargames in the world, and features an ever-evolving story that expands in written text, video games, and of course its original and arguably most important feature, the miniatures and its tabletop game. It is created and owned by Games Workshop, a UK-based company producing tabletop games and associated materials. Now, I will cover elements of 40k as briefly as I can today, but I won't skimp on detail just for the sake of time. It's as to the point as I can make it, but if you want to know more about specifics, here on my channel I've covered in detail some of the core background areas of the game, which
we'll
is
cover
continuing
that after.
to expand. I'll also be continuing to produce these short primers to the world of 40k, and I'll also be continuing to make the longer form content which is featured regularly here on the channel. Often referred to by those already consumed by Warhammer 40,000 as the hobby, 40k is not one thing to one person. It is a highly detailed narrative spanning multiple empires, from world-ending galactic campaigns to lowly individual soldier stories. It is a series of usually middle-of-the-road video games with a few standout gems. It's a hobby of addictive miniature painting and crafting, and it is a tabletop wargame now established for over 30 years.
200,000
It
books?
has spawned
Holy.
a variety of smaller games designed to be played without acquiring a huge army, games like Space Hulk, Necromunda, and Kill Team, and these often require only say 6 to 10 pieces per side and are very accessible for new players, whereas standard Warhammer 40,000 tabletop may require larger armies with many pieces. Now, before we come to the lore, it is worth looking at the original tabletop game, as this will give you a better understanding of just everything about it. If you've never seen or encountered a tabletop game, this is not important, it's actually very simple. Usually 2 players will engage in a battle laid out on a table at your home or a gaming venue. The area of play will be set with terrain pieces, often crafted and painted by the players, and they will alternate turns moving their miniature soldiers or vehicles, and will resolve engagements through random dice rolls according to specific rules and combinations of preset unit stats. There may or may not be a mission for one side to achieve, and these games can be highly strict or open to player interpretations. Players will usually paint their miniature soldiers for use on the battlefield, and these can be in a variety of factional designs and colours. Some people prefer their involvement in 40k to be focused entirely on this hobby of painting, designing and modifying these miniature units, and this part of 40k can be just as all-consuming as the lore or the tabletop. Some may choose to split their time between each part, or devote all their hobby time to one piece of the whole 40k hobby, be that the lore, tabletop, or the painting designing element. Now comes the challenge for me, summarising 40k.
What
So
one thing
Warhammer
do I need to
40,000
know?
is set in the distant future, a future beset by galactic war, from a skirmishing city turf war level through to planetary conquest and system-wide campaigns fought through its space and planets. It is far more pessimistic than most other deep lore universes, and also regularly borders on what you would describe as space horror.
Space horror. Oh, humanity.
Now, 40k is primarily focused around humanity, which has through many thousands of years achieved an unimaginable level of technology, and then lost the majority of this zenith through a devastating war. Humanity after this ancient war was left broken and fragmented across the galaxy. It would be later reunified by one godlike individual known as the Emperor of Man, and he would set in motion the new order for mankind known as the Imperium of Man. But a devastating civil war known as the Horus heresy would befall mankind before the Emperor could complete his goals for humanity, and he would instead now become a living corpse enshrined on Earth or Terra. Humanity would become shattered by this civil war, and after a slow, painful recovery, it has become for the longest time a stagnant civilization. Suffocating under its own bureaucracy, the Imperium has begun making the smallest steps toward advancement in the most recent days of its history, but it still stands as a strange juxtaposition of ancient tech that is beyond the comprehension of many of its citizens. It is a weak and precarious civilization, simultaneously able to wield immense military power. Humanity itself, through thousands of years of conflict with alien races who are more often than not excessively hostile, has become a highly xenophobic race. It views almost all other races as needing to be exterminated and has almost no morals or ethics as to how this is to be achieved. The galaxy-spanning empire of humanity is essentially a totalitarian state that worships the Emperor of Man. The Imperium of Man has large, if not complete, control over its citizens, including many aspects of their lives, economy, social life, education, private lives, science, and indoctrination into its ideology. Any who are not seen to be a follower of the Emperor may and will be persecuted as heretics. This is often largely open to interpretation and leads to large-scale abuses of power and executions. The Imperium uses this deeply entrenched worship and imperial ideology to control and mobilize mass populations of its citizenry for its armies like the Imperial Guard and Imperial Fleet. It also will utilize its citizens to fulfill whatever role is needed. These roles can, and often are, fairly unpleasant, especially when the rule of law is often severe and absolute. Humanity also wields in its arsenal the Emperor's greatest gift, the military sledgehammer known as the Imperial Astartes. These are the iconic Space Marines, genetically enhanced superhuman warriors who represent the pinnacle of human modification and military power. Their forces have access to some of the most powerful weapons and force multipliers humanity wields. Much of this tech is ancient and requires careful care and repair by specialists dedicated to retaining this critical knowledge. But as powerful as humanity is, even with its small progression in its most recent times, it still stands on the edge of annihilation by various alien races or entities. Humanity somehow has survived to this point despite being on an almost permanent risk of complete destruction and forced extinction. Within the lore, this has nearly happened on multiple occasions, and what is left of humanity now in the Imperium of Man are the remnants of those survivors, a highly ignorant, fearful people in a fairly constant state of decay where critical technological information is often lost.
Oh no.
The Imperium and humanity's primary goals are to locate lost technology from the zenith period of mankind, known as the Dark Age of Technology, otherwise referred to as the Golden Age. It also focuses upon the continued defense and expansion of its territories, and of course the extermination of all alien races, known collectively as the Xenos.
Oh.
Because humanity has become so violently and ignorantly xenophobic in the far future, it also has no qualms about committing planetary levels of genocide. If you're not human and don't worship the Emperor, then you are the enemy, a heretic, and must be exterminated. Diplomacy is almost not a thing for the Imperium, and the usual recourse is to just shoot on sight. In fairness though, there was a time where humanity had attempted a more diplomatic approach, but this over time has just disintegrated, with most of its contact with aliens resulting in some kind of conflict. It now simply believes all other life must be extinguished, or at the very least dominated and enslaved for work or experimentation. These cases are usually quite rare. There are 6 other races that are seen as the enemies of humanity. Any of these factions can be played by you within the tabletop game of 40k, or models for collecting and painting. Some players will dedicate themselves entirely to one faction, building it up, fleshing it out to the limit of their model making ability, and others may have multiple armies of different factions.
Yes, are the Necrons.
The Necrons are a very ancient race, strange creatures that appear like metallic skeletons. They're actually formed of living metal. They span the galaxy and are in a continuing state.
Do you think like a romance between a tech priest and a Necron would happen.
Of awakening from their tombs after many thousands of years of sleep. They seek to rebuild their
Probably
empire
not.
and dominate the
Be
galaxy.
like, I want to be
One
like
of their
you.
key abilities is that
I
of
want to be
reanimation. They can reassemble themselves after
want
death
to
and
abandon
fight
flesh.
on. They're also generally
Oddly,
mindless
it has
automatons.
happened.
How this came to be is another story. Now, Games Workshop has seen fit to recently rename some of its units, largely it seems for legal reasons, but since forever this faction has been known as the Eldar. More recently it is known as the Eldari, but basically it's the Eldar. These are derived from the elves of many more fantasy games and are basically space elves.
Space
Despite
elves!
this quite simplistic analogy, the Eldar have a rich and tragic lore. Because of past disasters that have left the Eldar with no homeworlds to speak of, they now travel the galaxy in vast ships known as craft worlds. The Eldar wield powerful weapons, but are generally physically weak, and they also have immense arrogance towards other races. Their defining feature, and to some degree their biggest flaw, is that the Eldar are very powerful when it comes to psykers and psychic abilities drawn from the warp. The Dark Eldar are essentially space pirates who live lives of excess and sadistic torture porn. Anyone who looks like they're about to be captured by the Dark Eldar is rarely something that you would want to contemplate, and suicide would generally be significantly preferable.
Oh boy.
A faction of many faces and contradicting goals, Chaos is as its name describes, and it originates from the parallel dimension known as the Warp. And this dimension is a reactive plane of existence that absorbs the most powerful emotions and desires of mortal creatures. The reactive immaterium would lead to the birth of entities of godlike power, the Chaos Gods. They each focus on specific mortal desires. Khorne is the god of blood, representing war, rage, and hatred. Tzeentch is the changer representing ambition, scheming, conspiracy, and sorcery. Nurgle is the plague god representing mortality, morbidity,
Nurgle,
and
god of
despair.
stinky.
And Slaanesh is the god of lust, greed, excess, pleasure, pain, and perfection. The continuing desires and emotions of the galaxy's inhabitants sustain these entities. However, they also reach out into the mortal realm through their manifested entities made from the warp known as demons. And these hellish creatures are enough to send ordinary citizens insane on sight. They're backed by traitors to the Imperium, the corrupted Chaos Space Marines. The gods of chaos and their agents can also infect the minds of mortals, and often cults and worshippers may spring up on planets across the Imperium. This is again one reason why the Imperium of Man is so ruthless about purging heretics. While chaos itself in the material world appears as one enemy that simply wages war, it is in fact in an internal conflict within itself. Each of the Chaos Gods fights for domination over the others, and this occupies the majority of their focus and energy. Each god's ultimate goal is complete domination of the immaterium, a goal which seems unattainable and dangerous to their own existence were it to come to pass. Chaos is one of the most varied and pervasive forces in 40k and has many forces operating under its banner, some dedicated to a specific god, others that simply worship chaos undivided.
The orcs!
Now everybody knows the orcs, right? Middle-earth and all that crap. Not these orcs. These are more Mad Max Fury Road crossed with British football hooligans, and then you're in the right ballpark, also in space. Space orcs are likely a genetically designed species focused for hyper-violence and to be almost impossible to permanently exterminate. They are as hilarious as they are dangerous, and their entire society focuses around casual violence. The orcs, though, are also probably the most sunny and optimistic of all races, strangely.
Are they like super OP though? Like I heard about the orcs, like they're very dumb, but anything they like believe to be true, essentially it wills it into existence, doesn't it? Like that's what I heard. Oh yeah, orcs are broken. Pretty much. Yeah.
Their genetic disposition sets them to see things as generally good and enjoyable, especially when it comes to fighting. And they never really see failure as a negative because it means you just get to have another go later. They also operate more on instinct by design than learned knowledge, and their willpower becomes more powerful the more orcs are present, meaning when they are collected en masse, they can literally will things to be true by collective belief. They also have a strange ability to just cobble together vehicles and weapons from scrap. They also have no real governing structure. Leaders are chosen by progressively being better at smashing their rivals' heads in until an orc eventually reaches the position of being a war boss. When orcs collect in huge numbers, they may launch a massive campaign of raiding and attacking anything that's not orc by launching a warg, essentially a huge, no-holds-barred slaughter fest. Anything in the way, best dig in or get the hell out. The Tau are one of the newer races and are fast learning that the galaxy is not a friendly place. The Tau operate similarly to the orcs on a more optimistic level, but that's about as far as their common ground with the orcs goes, because the Tau exist on the fringe of the Imperium and are unusual as they actively encourage other races to join their cause. They collectively follow an ideology known as the greater good. This is their guiding principle that working together is better than working against one another, as this leads to a stronger, more peaceful society. However, anybody who disagrees with this, best prepare for war. To be fair though, the Tau do usually attempt significant levels of diplomacy before declaring their target a lost cause. Their military is largely focused around technology and ranged combat, something often mocked and derided by their enemies. The Tau themselves are comparatively weak and use other races absorbed into their faction to fight in close quarters.
Bugs.
Tyranids are an unusual exception to all previous Xenos. They do not operate on an ideology, a political structure, or debatably a single leader. They are the most Xenos of Xenos and have begun a steady invasion of the galaxy. They are presumed to have arrived from beyond the borders of the known galaxy and are hostile in the extreme. They do not wield any technology as we would understand it, or their ships, forces and weapons are biological in origin. Tyranids are one of the most nightmarish factions within 40k. Their singular goal is biomass, that is to strip planets of all biological and mineral materials, leaving them barren, dead husks. They assault planets with extreme prejudice and will not cease their assault unless they are damaged to a point where their acquisition of biomass becomes negative to that being expended. They use all material to birth their forces on their vast bioships and recycle their own units by dissolving them back into the pool of biomass, which then they draw to create anything else they may need. They absorb the genetics of all that they encounter and use this to evolve and create more hostile and efficient creatures and biomachines to achieve their goal. They may also seed and infect planets ahead of time to often use the planet's own inhabitants against themselves when the Tyranids arrive to destroy the world. The Tyranids are controlled en masse by something called the hive mind. This is essentially a broadcasted collective consciousness that enables them the powerful skill of being able to operate as one, but made up of millions of individual entities across a planet. The Tyranids are horrific, seemingly unstoppable, and have already wrought terrible destruction upon many others across the galaxy. Many rumour that their already devastating campaigns are only the initial scouting parties to the Milky Way galaxy, and if this is true, the Tyranids could be the ones to end everything.
Damn.
While not wanting to touch on the subject of psychic power too strongly in this video, many factions in 40k feature what are known as psykers. These are essentially individuals who can wield what you might describe in other universes as magic powers. Some factions have strong psykers and others have none, and these powers are drawn from the parallel dimension known as the warp or the immaterium. Individuals who can use these powers do so at considerable risk, as the warp is an unstable and dangerous realm. The relationship between real space and warp space is a complicated one and can affect many aspects of life in the far future, but this is something best covered in another video. The takeaway for you today is that Warhammer 40,000 is a world of vast-scale warfare and complex interfactional and internal factional power struggles. 40k is by its very nature often absurd to the extreme. Sometimes this can be somewhat detrimental to its own narrative, because when everything is supersized and extreme in the extreme, suddenly everything looks kind of the same, and then it becomes arguably less impressive. However, 40k just owns its own absurdity, and it's something that you just have to roll with and suspend your disbelief. For many who are obsessed with 40k, the hyper-violent, xenophobic, genocidal nature of its occupants is largely a source for much dark humour. most people that are into Warhammer, they don't take it too seriously. But it is also fun to take things in 40k very seriously because it contains so much detail. But simultaneously, there are many memes and pure nonsensical comedy that comes from 40k because of just how extreme it is. The classic It Sounds Like Heresy being one such example, whereby anyone who dissents from the official line of thinking is declared a heretic and executed on the spot. It's one that I enjoy using all the time in the comments. And the key theme of 40k is purely about war. The lore is a vast, all-encompassing backdrop that stands on its own, but 40k for itself is all about the galactic wars that are unending. It's focused this way because it represents the background for a tabletop war game that is surprisingly about factional war. 40k itself operates on a fairly healthy dose of irony. Much of the events and organizations, forces and individuals often are the result of half-truths or pure indoctrination, and some of those that are held up as heroes are not what they appear to be, and as usual the context of events are very important, but many things can end up being actually quite subjective. The fact that the Imperium itself has, through its devout worship of the Emperor, now has its state religion embedded in almost everything it does, which is hilarious when you consider the Emperor of Man set out to eradicate religion from humanity entirely. Warhammer 40k draws from a lot of historical events and ideologies. It also borrows heavily from other settings like Dune, 2000 AD, Lovecraftian influence, obviously Tolkien, and even older texts like Milton's Paradise Lost and the Divine Comedy with Dante and the Inferno. 40k has continued to be fleshed out over time, and it shows no signs of abating. If anything, it's moving forward at a faster pace than ever.
Thank you.
It is a universe that has consumed me for some 30 years, and I highly recommend that you allow the darkness of the far future to enter your life. You may live to regret it, but you will undoubtedly enjoy it. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, if you have a suggestion for what my next 40k primer should be, tell me in the comments. If you want to learn more about Warhammer 40,000, check out the video on the end screen to the left, or my collected playlist of content to the right. This is Luton. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for the viddies, Rema. We're gonna take a quick little like 5-minute intermission, and then we're gonna be watching an even longer video. That was a 20-minute one. And we're gonna move on to the more like detailed ones, because I think I'm starting to get it. It's making a little bit of sense. I'm starting to understand. Now it's just a matter of learning all the different words. That there's still a lot of words. There's still a lot of things. You know. So BRB. Boop. Okay, I'm back. We're ready to go. Nickel mode I think is not redeemed anymore, but we're ready to Warhammer, as in like Warhammer lore. It's time to Warhammer lore. It be that time. So let me just make sure I've got everything going good here so I can see all my notifications from you guys and the redeems. Mark that one off as complete. Pop that over there onto my other screen. It's getting interesting though. I'm interested in learning more. Like when it comes to like a lot of the games I've very much enjoyed, it's because of like the story and like the lore to things. It is a little bit difficult when like certain games or like series I've watched or you know, enjoyed where you have to like seek out the lore outside of it. I remember being very frustrated with Destiny 1 because like a lot of the lore you had to like go on to like the website to view. You couldn't view it like in game at the time for the first Destiny game, which is like a little like frustrating. But later on they fixed that, so, and they started fleshing out the story more, etc. And then like for things like the Souls series, like a lot of the lore is hidden in like item descriptions and stuff, which is interesting. But it's always great when you've got like content creators who will just like do really good like lore overviews and recaps and stuff like that.
Closest associates. This initial founding of perhaps even only a few hundred Marines would soon grow exponentially to become the vast Imperial legions of the Great Crusade. there's little rock-solid information on the numbers of Marines within the legions at the inception of the Emperor's crusade to reunite humanity all throughout the galaxy. But after a few hundred years of the crusade, it's estimated that most of the legions numbered between 80 and 100,000 Astartes. A few were around 150 to 170,000, and the 13th Legion of the Ultramarines numbered as many as 250,000. In the context of a crusade though spanning an entire galaxy, these numbers are actually quite small, but it speaks to the strength and capability of the Astartes that such numbers could inflict the catastrophic devastation that would soon visit upon a burgeoning humanity. That devastation was the Horus heresy. It's difficult to summarise the heresy in a few sentences, but by the end of the crusade the Emperor had handed considerable power to Horus, the first Primarch reunited with the Emperor before they'd even left the Sol system. And whenever Primarchs were reunited with their legions, this could very often alter their structure, character, even their name. Terran-born masters who had commanded the legion from their inception stepped aside, and although this was often handled with respect, good humour even, for some of the legions these changes caused undeniable internal friction between the Terran-born and those who originated from their Primarch's adopted homeworlds. This though was merely one small detail which helped to fracture the loyalty of some Astartes legions at the end of the crusade. It remains difficult to definitively point to a single trigger that caused the heresy. Some of the Emperor's Primarchs, like Lorgar, had felt scorned and rejected for some time. Others held feelings that were, despite their demigod-like status, all too human. Jealousy, resentment. It all added up to an immense dark storm on the horizon, and when the Emperor entrusted the completion of the crusade to Horus, it created an ideal space to allow the germination of treacherous ideas. Horus and at least 9, although some speculate 11, legions of Astartes turned against the Emperor and embarked on a journey of planetary warfare that tore the newly founded Imperium apart. But despite its legendary status, the heresy really only lasted a few years.
Dad left me,
but
Dark
these
Gods
times
came
were
for
very
me.
dark
Fuck
and
Dad,
destructive.
time to purge
Entire planets were
everything.
scoured. Those who abstained from taking sides suffered equally in the long term, and even those who held firm risked later purges from loyalists who were quick to doubt and equally quick to exact punishment. At the end of this infamous heresy, Horus would fight the Emperor, resulting in the fabled obliteration of Horus and the Emperor being interred upon the Golden Throne, where he would then remain for the next 10,000 years. In the aftermath of the heresy, it was decided that a legion was too powerful a thing for any one individual,
50 bucks?
even a
Holy
Primarch,
shit.
to command over. So it was decided by Lord Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines 13th Legion, that each of the remaining Loyalist legions should be subdivided into chapters of 1,000 strong Marines. These would function more like a powerful strike force to function in collaboration with the other assets of the Imperium, as well as of course working together where necessary. Critically though, it would form the template for the next 10,000 years of Astartes history. This realignment of power of the Astartes within the Imperium was known as the Second Founding, which brings us roundly to the recruitment of Marines and the Foundings.
The founding?
Regardless of the scale and time period, little has changed about how the Astartes were recruited. Some exposure to a hard life is beneficial early on, a signifier of an individual who can stand apart from others, win by attrition, some genetic instinct to survive and overcome. This leads to many Marines having been recruited from harsh planets of either urban sprawl or hellish feral death worlds where the conditions and native flora and fauna are the enemy at all times. There are other instances where individuals are prepared, likely from birth, within noble hereditary-based warrior houses within hive worlds, or cities who hold open competitions for selection, testing out hopefuls with endurance games and likely things which will descend into a macabre spectacle. There is little to restrict those who choose to trial for Astartes, but there are some preconditions within specific areas placed upon prospective candidates for trials. These are always going to include age, genetic compatibility. Some individuals' bodies will always reject the gene seed of a chapter, likely to result in their death. So testing may take place before youths try out, as is sensible to do. And until the law specifically states otherwise, it continues to be the case that all Astartes are male. I know that this has been a matter of contention for some time, but it just currently simply is the case that this has been restated repeatedly within the official published law, even very recently.
I can't be a space
Little explanation
marine.
given to this fact, but and that's hardly new territory for 40k. General compatibility is not something specifically considered for Astartes in training, but most candidates are expected, of course, to be fit, mentally sharp, displaying some sense of character that will enable them to survive the brutality of their life yet to come. No matter how they're recruited though, it's unfortunately generally true that the rate of success in joining the next stage of Astartes conditioning and training is very low. Further tests continue from here on and throughout their augmentation to become full Astartes. Many more will perish during the harrowing conditions and examinations of their abilities, ensuring that only those who are truly destined to become a member of the Imperium's warrior elite will do so. This will of course be the proudest moment for any parents, siblings, wider family, even a community, should someone from their world, their city, their family be selected to go forward to Astartes training. But it will simultaneously be a time of sadness, for they will almost certainly never see nor hear that person again. They may die in the training or augmentation 1 year from selection, or centuries later taking a last stand against the very worst enemies of humanity. Both instances would not diminish the pride nor respect felt by their family and shown by those who would know their flesh and blood had been chosen to become a member of the Imperial Astartes.
Chapters and foundings.
The structure of the Astartes has changed significantly since their inception. Not just their structure, of course, but their scale. In the early days of the Crusade, the legions were likely small in comparison to their size toward the end of the heresy, but still very likely larger than a modern era chapter of just 1,000 marines. The huge scale of growth of the legions came at the behest of the Emperor, who forced the legions to grow so quickly it's believed to have in part caused the deterioration of some of their genetics, leading to several legions exhibiting problematic
floating
traits.
Skulls?
The first founding of the Imperial Astartes consisted of the 20 legions who were formed by the Emperor at the beginning of the Great Crusade. Their epic quests to reunite humanity are the stuff of legend, but the sheer power of the Astartes war machine when left unconstrained was terrifying to behold. I think it's best conceptualized by an Ultramarines quotation which goes as follows: to take a town, send a legionary. To take a city, send a squad. To take a world, send a company. To take a culture, send a chapter. The description of only requiring 1,000 Space Marines to take a culture gives a sense of what a legion of some 100,000 Marines could be capable of. And it was this scale of destructive potential that ensured the heresy would become one of the worst civil wars ever seen by humanity. The first founding consisted of the 20 legions as follows: the Dark Angels with their Primarch Lionel Johnson, the Emperor's Children, their Primarch Fulgrim, the Iron Warriors, their Primarch Perturabo, the White Scars, their Primarch Jakatu Khan, the Space Wolves and their Primarch Leman Russ, the Imperial Fists with Rogor Dawn, the Night Lords, Conrad Kurz, the Blood Angels, Sanguinius, the Iron Hands, Ferrus Manus, the World Eaters with Angron, the Ultramarines and Robuta Gilliman, the Death Guard, Mortarion, the Thousand Sons with of course Magnus, the Sons of Horus and the Primarch Horus, the Word Bearers, Lorgar, Salamanders, Vulcan, Raven Guard, Corax, and the Alpha Legion, their Primarch Alfarius. Obviously should note the Alpha Legion had 2 Primarchs technically, but we'll come to that later. As noted, in the aftermath of the heresy, it had become clear that the power of an Astartes legion was something so devastating it risked the future stability of the Imperium should a situation like this arise again. After all, who knows the size to which the surviving loyalist legions could have grown if they had remained after the heresy? What if one had, similarly to the Ultramarines during the heresy, outnumbered the others significantly and then later caused a problem? It's terrifying to imagine a legion of 1 million, 2 million or more Space Marines. So Robuta Gilliman decided that the Legiones Astartes would cease to exist in their current form. From here on they would become the Adeptus Astartes, Not
Adeptus
all
is
of the
sorry.
remaining loyalist Primarchs agreed with this path forward, but the very fact that the prospect of another conflict between them brought the logical conclusion into clarity, albeit still somewhat bitterly. The Space Marine chapters would be the default format from here on. This led to some new terminology. Progenitor chapters or first founding chapters were those who retained the name of the original parent legion. A primogenitor chapter were those created from the 9 loyalists remaining post-heresy, but who did not carry the legion's name forward. These were chapters created from a legion, now designated with a new title. For example, from the Ultramarines there were the Aurora chapter, the Emperor's Spears, the Howling Griffins. From the Blood Angels you had the Flesh Terrors, the Sons of Sanguinius. The Imperial Fists fielded the Black Templars, the Crimson Fists, and so on. Guilliman created his famous Codex Astartes at this time to help be a guiding
there's the Codex
principle.
Astartes. You guys were talking about that earlier. Now I'm gonna know what it is. Let's go.
For all the new chapters, to try and retain some stability and coherency that would give a foundation for these new chapters to stand upon, for they were in entirely new territory. Not all, of course, would choose to follow the Codex as strictly as others. For those successors from the Ultramarines, the Codex was often seen as their gospel word of their Primarch and therefore should and must be adhered to. But for those with heritage and ancestry to the Dark Angels, the Space Wolves, the Imperial Fists, it was viewed as more of a suggested guideline. Over the many thousands of years since, there has emerged no singular version also of the Codex Astartes. It's been amended, tweaked to a point where some chapters even went to war because of differing opinions as to its content. The establishment of chapters was no...
This is like the Space Marine Bible, essentially, right? to some of them, right? Right? Is a Space Marine... Codex Astartes is like the Space Marine Bible. Okay, gotcha.
Easy or small thing either. For many of the Astartes, it was a difficult process to try and start anew after they had held such storied histories previously, especially in the aftermath of something like the heresy. For many, they had achieved the pinnacle moments of their duty, surviving an apocalyptic civil war against the traitors, but then to be segmented and placed into new chapters who technically had no history or background or glory of any kind. They would have to start from a clean slate, win their own victories. And
essentially, depending on the chapter, to some it's their Bible, to some it's a handbook, to some it's a guideline. Essentially, and then the chapters will fight sometimes each other because of these disagreements, correct? Am I wrong? Or are you guys just like opinionated because some of you guys are like faction already? I'm like seeing you guys like fight in chat over this. It's kind of funny. You guys are like proving yourselves the amount of infighting over this shit.
And so they would. There were many smaller foundings between the second founding and the return of Roboute Guilliman to the Imperium at the end of M41. These continual foundings were designated whenever several new chapters were established, not at any given point other than just when it were necessary. Sometimes entire chapters are destroyed or just vanish, and so foundings would occur to help bolster the supposed 1,000 chapters active in the Imperium at all times. Whether that figure is accurate or not is unknown. It's likely there are more or less Astartes alive today in the Imperium. It's doubtful anyone will ever truly be able to record this with accuracy. There were, though, supposedly as many as 24 foundings since the most important first and second foundings. Many of these others are not recorded officially either, and are broadly known by M41 as successor chapters, basically any chapter originating from the gene stock of the original 9 loyalists. Also, the nature of chapters from the second founding onward would change, not least because they were no longer on a continual crusade throughout the galaxy, but also it seems strange that a chapter must be obligated to designate itself with a homeworld, especially if it didn't have one or even need one.
Okay.
So there emerged many different kinds of these successor chapters. Not even the original Loyalist 9 would all retain their homeworlds, the Dark Angels, for example, having their planet sucked into the warp, only with a small rock asteroid to call home. But there are those who still retain a home planet. These are known as single world chapters. They do not have a huge territory to oversee and will remain on one planet. Mostly these will have limited populations, often it's a very hostile world. Some chapters do situate themselves on hive or industrial worlds, but this is less common.
Okay.
Dominion chapters are, as the name suggests, based upon a world or several worlds that allow them to oversee multiple systems or an entire region of the galaxy. One of the best examples, of course, being the Ultramarines with Ultima.
So,
Bound
all chapters followed by the Grey Knights and Black Templars. But weren't the Black Templars like an offshoot of one of the original 9? So does that mean that they were one of the ones that betrayed, that went against the Emperor in the big fight? Oh no, I'm getting confused. I need flowcharts and diagrams. They're loyal, but they do their own thing. Okay, so they're loyal, but they don't follow the codex? But isn't that heresy? How can they be loyal if they don't follow the codex? Is the codex like... Would they say that's the who created the codex? Who created the codex? Oh, because it wasn't set down by the Emperor. Okay, so. Okay. I guess it makes it different when your god is actually like still alive and literally there. People can't just say like, this is they can't say the Emperor wrote it because he's literally there and didn't write it. So, kind of thing. So, interesting.
chapters are the opposite, usually stationed on one
Hello,
world
Novel
or just an
VR.
area with a specific task they must oversee, defense usually of a valuable high-risk asset or other infrastructure. Fleet-based or mobile chapters travel around the galaxy.
After the Emperor was killed, what are you talking about? He's not dead. He's not dead. He's immortal. He is on his throne. He's not dead.
With no fixed address. Fleets are, as they sound, a collection of naval assets, usually with one massive ancient capital vessel as the Astartes base of operations.
Yeah, I'm just saying he's not dead.
The mobile chapters
That's
are
saying
those
he's
who have
alive.
some other means of travel,
But he's not
such
dead.
as the Dark Angel's Rock or the Imperial Fist's Phalanx. Lastly, garrison chapters, who may fit into any of the previous categories, will likely have a singular base of operation, but the parameters of their deployment mean they're spread across a wide area, maybe multiple systems divided into smaller units. Sometimes this can involve the construction of a chapter keep or more localized limited versions of chapter monasteries.
The Ultima founding.
After the first and second foundings, there were, as we said, many which occurred through to the end of M41, other foundings. But when Robotigulaman returned to the Imperium, at this point there was a new founding of significant importance, the Ultima founding. The Ultima founding was, of course, the point at which we saw the emergence of the Primaris Marines. With this, Guilliman would also revise his Codex Astartes as he saw it necessary for chapters to be adapted to the new weapons they could now wield, and the tactics that must be adapted to within the modern Imperium, or the contemporary Imperium. His new Novo Codex Astartes described chapter organization, tactics, theory, and much more. Archimagos Belisarius' Call, an undoubtedly legendary genius with a fascinating past, but also seen by many within the Mechanicus as problematic, even a heretic, undertook the task given to him by Guilliman to forge a new army for the future of the Imperium. To this end, he was gifted by Guilliman the Sanprimus Portum, a gene vault containing the pristine genetic material of all 20 gene seed lines from the Astartes. As Guilliman lay in stasis for 10,000 years, Call had no direct oversight. His only mission statement was to improve upon the Emperor's original Astartes design. which he did far above the expectations of Guilliman when originally setting him the task. Call created faster, stronger, larger, more durable Marines, the Primaris. Not only this, he had provided the hardware needed to equip them. In time, it also became apparent that although difficult, the original Marines, often referred to now as Firstborn, could be augmented to become Primaris. It was, though, an extremely painful and dangerous process. The arrival of the Primaris in the Ultima founding was not without controversy, though. For one, many of the existing chapters were very unhappy at this sudden arrival of strange Marines, unproven in battle and to be abruptly integrated into their chapters. Within the wider Imperium and Terra, there was also unease or even grumbling outcries that the returning Primarch was acting highly suspiciously. In the 10,000 years since the heresy, few lived who remembered those times now, and the prospect now for a son of the Emperor, a brother technically of Horus, returning with some vast army emerging that had been concealed until now, did not seem altogether a positive thing. It would take considerable diplomacy from Guilliman to quiet the grumbling nobility of the Imperium, the lords, ladies and senior members of the Administratum, Inquisition and more, that his intentions were entirely loyal to the Emperor and sincere. Not least, Guilliman had to tread especially careful around the ecclesiarchy, the now galaxy-wide, heavily embedded and extremely powerful leadership of the imperial state religion worshipping the God Emperor. Ultimately, the self-evident need for the Primaris in the devastating times to which Guilliman returned would calm things, along with his actions and his ability to protect and bring stability to an Imperium on what really was a catastrophic brink of collapse with the emergence of the Great Rift and ever-increasing threats from Xenos, traitors and the dark enemies of the Warp. The Primaris continued on now in the darkest of times. They form the bulk of Marines commanded by Guilliman on his Indomitus crusade, as he seeks to recover and stabilise the Imperium, especially the Dark Imperium on the broadly eastern side of the galaxy. The first phase of his crusade is now complete, and the Primaris are embedded within a broad swath of successor chapters. New, entirely Primaris chapters were also founded during this time. Without the Primaris and the Ultima founding, it's doubtful Guilliman would have been able to defend and stabilise Imperium Sanctus.
Well, I kind of have gotten into what the warp is a little bit. It's like a evil, not like it's like a different world. Like it's like the opposite, and there's crazy powers and chaos gods from there. Kind of. I don't know. I kind of get what the warp is. Warp bad. Chaos gods come from there. and sometimes people use psychic powers that are from the warp, and it's dangerous.
Through his vision and the successful integration and deployment of the Primaris, many great chapters of the Astartes were saved from what had potentially been their certain destruction. Now bolstered and invigorated by new blood, the crusade would continue on to recover the darkened Imperium from the horrors of the Rift and the all-enveloping darkness that consumed almost half the galaxy. So for today, when we're talking about the chapters of the Astartes, and by chapters this means loyalists, we're not talking about traitor legions, who technically still exist as legions.
Okay.
There are also far too many
because they turned legions into chapters after the big thing, but I'm guessing still the legions that went against are still legions. Okay, that makes sense.
Robute Guilliman is so good and organizing any mess. It's basically the equivalent to that one guy who really knows how to use Microsoft Excel.
Gotcha. He good at organizing. Oh, see, I need charts like this while he's explaining.
Chapters of the Space Marines to speak to, so I'll generally be concentrating on an overview for the core progenitor chapters, maybe some of the primogenitor successors.
There's so many!
The ones that I feel are interesting and noteworthy. Remembering also that today we're just overviewing.
Okay. What about that one chapter where they're like pink maid space marines. Is that a chapter? I know it's a fan made chapter, but still, the maids.
So sadly not the 10-hour video. I would need to deep dive every chapter. Space Marine chapters will generally adhere to a typical command structure where
No, I want to look at more of the chapters. I see cool designs.
a senior Astartes known as the chapter master.
I kind of want to see the difference between the Astartes versus the what were they called? Like the newer Space Marine primaris? Yeah, I wanna know the difference between the armors of those and the capabilities and the size. Like I want a side by side comparison with little points, like little notes and stuff. Like you know what I'm saying? And the weapon differences and stuff, and the armor, and bigger and stronger is slightly different armor. It seems like they had like more of like I could notice like the armor was definitely different in like the lower torso area. It looked different.
Oversees all aspects of the chapter organization. Their responsibilities, involvement with Imperial allies, current objectives, orders from higher up in the Imperium. They may have some form of senior council, trusted, loyal veteran officers with whom they confer as
Space Marine too. Are we Primaris or Astartes? Or are we do we have a mix of those for that game? I wonder.
As well as more human aids
also,
taken from within the Imperial bureaucracy, navigators, Inquisition, and so forth.
That's going to be interesting to figure out.
From there, the details of their chapter organization depend largely on how compliant they are, namely how Codex compliant they are. For the chapters more closely adhering to the Codex, they'll usually have 10 companies, each with a captain. The 10th most often for Vanguard infantry and scouts, basically support stuff, 8th and 9th for close support and fire support, 6th and 7th reserve battle line infantry, 2nd to the 5th battle line infantry, and the 1st is always veterans. Above these and separate are the librarians, chaplains, apothecaries, the Forge of Tech Marines, and chapter master. A compliant chapter will have within its senior command structure
I wonder how many
captains,
chapters they have
2
available for playing
lieutenants,
the game.
sergeants and the veterans, company champions
cool.
and ancients. Also, of course, will be the senior member of the specific specialties like the librarians and the chaplains. In reality, much of this is fairly loosely applied, while those of the Ultramarines and some of their successors may look upon these as details to be strictly applied. For other chapters, any of the
So Ultramarines are kind of like still very core, follow the Emperor all the way, follow the Codex by the book, kind of dudes. Like they're the main dudes. And the Ultramarines is a chapter based off which legion was that, and then which dude. Nine founding chapters. So like Ultramarines one of the 9. You mean the 9 founding legions? Because they went from legions to chapters. So there's 9 founding legions. But then we later made them into chapters, but some of these 9 founding ones split into multiple chapters, right? I'm trying to understand. Robot Gilman, Robot Gilmain is their daddy.
These details may not be present, or for example contain more officers than other chapters.
We'll find out about the Ultramarines
In the case
later.
of, let's say, chapters such as the Space Wolves, it's actually unknown just what their numbers are, or their organisational practices with specificity. Some speculate the Space Wolves never truly divided themselves down into specific chapters, or at least not to the degree some other legions did. They're very reticent to reveal details about their numbers, and few would push the matter. An implying wink and a nod though, say likely all that needs to be said. Chaplains of the chapter Reclusium are an interesting detail, as are the Space Marine Psychers of the Librarius. neither were really officially present in significant numbers in the aftermath of the heresy, especially the religious representatives for each chapter in the form of the chaplains. These came later, and Lord Commander Guilliman has, for obvious reasons, not abolished these long-established positions within Astartes chapters. One question often arises though: do the Space Marines actually worship the Emperor in the sense that humans and members of the ecclesiarchy, and especially the sororitas, do? The answer is, it's variable, but mostly not.
Mostly not.
Some chapters may tolerate some religious idolatry, pay it lip service, generally avoid its irritating sermons and long-winded ceremonies. Others will fully embrace the line of the imperial religion that the Emperor is the god of humanity and lean into this in all respects. So it's not to say though that chaplains aren't absent from chapters who take the more traditional view of the Emperor. They play a role not far removed from the times of the Crusade. In chapters such as these, chaplains form a necessary bridge, a diplomatic representative, to negotiate and engage with the required obligations that are just part of existing within the Imperium in M41. They smooth things over, keep everybody happy. They'll display their chapter heroes, the champions, the veterans with relevant religious
busy playing,
fervor. If a chaplain's role is being
Marine
performed correctly, those who hold true belief in the Emperor should be indistinguishable from those who merely adhere to the mandatory necessities. And this isn't to say that chaplains don't have a role.
Yeah,
or that
the
it's
Nine
just
Legions
a
split
token
into a
gesture.
lot of
They're
founding
often
chapters.
regarded in their
Some of
chapters
them split into less,
as
some split
looking
into
after
more.
the heritage, the stories, the glory, the narrative of that chapter, and that's taken very seriously as well. The other specialists of a chapter are the librarians. Apothecaries and tech marines all undergo various specific training practices, sometimes away from their base of operations and the chapter, especially in the case of the tech marines, who will spend time with the mechanics to learn about the machine spirit, the machine god, how to correctly maintain the technology of a chapter, most importantly the correct amount of incense to burn to encourage the best performance of any piece of ancient hardware. All chapters, of course, contain considerable additional individuals who perform all manner of roles.
My
Again, not
PCs were
necessarily
blessed by
true
the
for every
machine
single
spirit.
chapter, but generally speaking, you'll have serfs, servants to do all manner of menial labour, administrative, household, armourers, stewards, emissaries, scribes, and so on. Almost whatever you can think of that would likely need attending to. Even agri-workers selected for their skills from Imperial Agri-Worlds. Then of course you have your servitors, other Imperial administrators, members of the Telepathica, the Navigators, the Mechanicus, the list goes on and on. So a Space Marine chapter can be extremely complex depending on its operational nature, but it could also be very Spartan and minimal in terms of its support staff. Like all aspects of the Astartes, it's widely variable, and much of this is going to be dictated by the territory occupied, the resources available, the default mission assigned to the chapter. A vast realm such as Ultima is going to be wildly different to, say, the Rock of the Dark Angels.
Oh, okay.
Now, I had planned to originally cover all the core chapters, the progenitor chapters, in one video. But as is often the case, I realised this was going to make the video 3 hours long. TLDR, I decided to split this into 2 parts. Today, we're looking at the troubled and shattered chapters in the aftermath of the heresy and the times since. That means the Angels of Death and those such as the Iron Hands, Salamanders and Raven Guard, who in one way or another struggled in the shadow of the destruction they suffered at the outbreak of the heresy. When we come soon to part 2, we'll be looking at the other chapters such as the Imperial Fists and the Ultramarines, who have long, very deep histories with the Imperium that deserve a little bit more depth, even in the setting of a mere brief overview. And just to say it again, I fully intend to continue this series forward after that, where we'll be looking to dive properly into the legions and chapters of the Astartes on an individual basis.
Okay.
So let's begin with an overview of one of the most contentious of chapters.
The Dark Angels, so edgy. So edgy.
The
Sleep
Dark
well,
Angels
Connor.
are the first founding chapter. That is to say, they were the first legion forged by the Emperor on Terra whilst the Unification Wars were still happening. But their history winds its way between some of the most revered Astartes and heretics. They maintain an aesthetic of being monastic and religious.
So when you say gene seed, does it technically mean that, like, every new Space Marine in that chapter is kind of like a bit of a clone, or like the DNA is like copied from like the original. Like I'm a little bit, they didn't really explain the gene seed thing very clearly, and I'm a little confused by that. I know when they maybe it made into like Space Marines, it's like implants, right? Yeah, implants. Are they all the same, or is it different per chapter? Well, does that change who you are as a person? 23 after the primaris came out. Okay, so start as 19 for the Astartes, and then 23 for primaris. Interesting. And the gene seeds are what allows them to like basically put on any armor well, right? Different per legion, it is DNA from the Primarchs. And the Primarchs were the 9 Primarchs. Yeah? What's the DNA for the Primaris, though? Is that still from the 9 Primarchs? Or is it...
But this is not really a trait they're specifically known for in terms of practicing or applying the imperial religion. Their title, the Angels of Death, is ascribed to them because during the earliest times they were given near unlimited access to use any of the weaponry available to achieve their objectives, even technology that has since been outlawed or simply faded into darkness. In the time of the Crusade and the Legions, the Dark Angels of course excelled as they had done since their inception, but their failing would not be out among the stars like some of their brother Astartes who would stand against the Emperor. The Dark Angels' problems began on their homeworld of Caliban. Here their Primarch would be discovered by Luther, a member of the Knightly Order upon Caliban, for it was what the Imperium would designate as a feudal world. There are many types of planet in the Imperium ranging from their technological level and environmental conditions, and some human worlds reverted to a feudal state during the Age of Strife, and found the only way for them to survive was through enforcing a feudal system that often largely rejected technology, and importantly those who displayed psychic ability. These were often the individuals who during the Age of Strife condemned worlds to the ravages of warp creatures and horrors beyond imagination, so many of the surviving worlds purged their psykers. Upon discovery of the scattered Primarch, Luther named him Lionel Johnson and brought him into their knightly order. As all Primarchs, he quickly displayed advanced abilities and learning and rose within the knightly order of Caliban to eventually become its commander. When the Emperor was reunited with the Lion, they of course left to embark on the Great Crusade, and he would command his Dark Angels to great success. Luther was by the Primarch's side every step of the way, until he was returned to Caliban to raise up recruits for the First Legion. In the aftermath of the Horus heresy, the Lion returned to Caliban, but what he discovered was not a celebration of their return, but instead a nightmare. Luther had been deeply bitter about his return to the homeworld and saw it as being dismissed from the glory. To not fight alongside the Lion at the most critical of times was taken by him as a deeply personal insult and slight. Luther had been corrupted, although not seemingly by any specific chaos god, but as did many in this time, he was just consumed by the undivided powers of chaos. Luther and the Lion would fight a titanic battle, and although he could not bring himself to kill Luther, the Lion certainly bested him. But Luther's final act was to lay a final strike upon Lionel Johnson. The reality of this broke Luther out of his bitter days of treachery, and he saw the insanity of his actions, but this moment also brought the attention of the Chaos Gods, who engaged a powerful warp storm around Caliban.
Oh no.
The planet would be destroyed due to the continual bombardment being laid down upon the planet by the Loyalists in orbit, and with the planet's geology now so weakened and the warp storm so powerful, it began to pull the planet apart, dragging it into the warp, along with the so-called fallen angels, the Dark Angels of Luther, who had been similarly twisted by dark ideas and bitter
Fallen
resentment.
angels, oh.
This is where the appearance of the mysterious creatures native to Caliban are relevant. These are known as the Watchers in the Dark, and they are beings of small stature and curious ability. They spirited the Lion away at this time, deep within the planet, where he would remain for some 10,000 years.
10,000 years?
All that was left of Caliban after it was destroyed by the warp storms was the centre of the world, the Rock. And this only existed at all because of the immense force fields surrounding the Order's fortress monastery. It protected it from being dragged into the warp with the rest of the planet, and now it was all that remained of Caliban, a small, bizarre, single asteroid with the ruins of their fortress monastery. This would become the appropriately titled Rock of the Dark Angels, later fitted with propulsion engines that would enable them to pilot it around the galaxy.
Oh, that's so cool.
The Rock contained many dark secrets. The biggest were that the Lion himself remained deep within, guarded over by the Watchers, waiting for the time to return to the Imperium when it needed him the most. And as was recently revealed to us, that time seemingly is now. Lionel Johnson returns to the Imperium in M41 to fight for the survival of humanity in its darkest time. As for Luther, for the longest time he was believed to have remained within the Rock also, but none could ever reach or find him. But shortly after the formation of the Great Rift, a demon prince Marbas launched an invasion of the Rock that succeeded in freeing Luther. It is currently suspected that Luther is now assembling those of the fallen
it's
into a
Warhammer
new
42K?
Dark Legion that could bring the galaxy to heel. This is of course the ancient history of the Dark Angels, but it's specifically relevant as unlike other chapters, the Dark Angels have remained loyalist but also are tainted by a deep shame that some of their number did turn traitor, a fact they have fought to conceal for the longest time, and something that has brought them into conflicts with inquisitors who desire for them to be excommunicated from the Imperium, cast out alongside the Thousand Sons, Alpha Legion and more. The destruction of Caliban was something that occurred in relative isolation, and this meant that they have been able to largely conceal what took place at that time, and dismissively blame it upon the traitors, for there was much confusion and chaos in the scouring and hunting which occurred immediately after the death of Horus. Many traitors went on rampages as they retreated at speed to any area they could escape the wrath of the Loyalists. But to conceal this event took a dark course for the Dark Angels, in that to efficiently conceal what had happened, they had to slaughter any individuals that they felt were untrustworthy or who had witnessed or even been present at that time. This meant that actually tens of thousands of menial human staff aboard their ships or the Rock had to be executed. It's been reported as well that they even murdered some of their own loyal Astartes and brothers who refused to take an oath of secrecy to what had occurred. So these were extremely dark times for the First Legion, and they really walked a thin line between heresy and loyalist. Worse still, they had lost their Primarch, and using their librarian psychers, they attempted to discover the location of the Lion, yet this only brought more pain for the Dark Angels, as they learned now that their fallen brothers, the true traitors, had in fact not been killed in the destruction of Caliban. They knew now they were scattered somewhere unaccounted for, unreachable of course in the warp. This created an extremely anxious, stressful crisis for the Dark Angels. If any of the traitors were captured or spoken to about what had occurred, it could taint and damn them all. The ferocity and merciless actions of loyalists post-heresy was especially intense, mainly driven by the anxiety of what could occur if the catastrophe of Caliban were revealed, and this largely forged the ongoing future nature of the Dark Angels in the next 10,000 years. For one thing, it led any successor chapters derived from the gene stock of the Dark Angels to be held on a pretty short leash, and these unusually close associations, which we likely can surmise is of course due to the Dark Angels wishing to ensure they maintain and airtight lock on their dark secret, it's led to speculation and suspicion not of the truth to the Dark Angels' history, but that similarly to others like the Space Wolves, they're deliberately attempting to engage in so-called Legion building. There has remained a great deal of scrutiny over any chapters since the heresy who maintain suspiciously high numbers or very close relationships with their successor chapters. There is a great fear that it always remains that somehow a legion of Astartes could once again rise up and with its focused power wreak untold damage upon the Imperium or Terra itself. However, outlooks about such matters have begun to change in recent times. The Dark Angels and their successors did not just maintain close relations to each other, they acted often as would appear one united organisation of Astartes. That's how close they like to keep things to their chest. But the return of Guilliman changed views in general about such matters, and likely now the return of Lionel Johnson, their Primarch, even more so. Guilliman returning and then bringing out of nowhere vast hordes of Primaris Marines at his command, as we noted earlier, shook things up a lot in the Imperium, and gave many within the leadership of the Imperium a moment of anxiety. They thought that their worst fears about the return of Space Marine legions appeared to be happening. However, Guilliman's masterful diplomacy and actions quickly dispelled these fears, and so tolerance towards chapters with close ties to their successors, or even suspiciously large numbers, has been leaning more now toward being tolerated rather than feared. Now, with the Dark Angels Primarch returned, it seems likely that the Dark Angels have far less to fear than they would have done otherwise. The word of a Primarch obviously carries considerable weight, and although they are far from having nothing to worry about, the Dark...
How long can these Primarchs live? Because it feels like... Or like, how long can a Space Marine, Asteris, or Primaris live? Like, how long have we... They're demigods, so essentially if you've been turned into a demigod, you've got you're essentially immortal? Like, you can be killed, but immortality in the sense of as long as maintenance is provided on the body, you will not die of regular, like, aging, correct? Or is there actually an average, like, 600 years? Okay. And now, is that the Astartes Space Marine, or do Primaris ones live longer? I'm wondering. There are Space Marines over 1,200 years. Cool. The Primarchs, though, they live much longer because those are the ones that are closer to gods than just a regular, like, Astartes or Primaris Space Marine, correct?
Dark Angels are certainly in a better position than they were in previous millennia. The final thing to note with the Dark Angels is their blend of aesthetic and monastic order. Much has been carried forward from their feudal ancient times, and while Astartes are generally speaking not directly engaging with the religious worship of the Emperor, much of their behaviour can still be interpreted as such, which is usually deliberate and just as well as it helps smooth relations.
Sons of the Emperor. Okay. When they say sons of the Emperor, is that like a literal sense, like a biologically they are sons of the Emperor? In that sense, or is it like a DNA descendants, or is it a like just a like title? Because I don't think, like, they said sons of the Emperor but didn't go into it. And then also, if they are sons of the Emperor, who was the mother, or are these like artificially created sons? Look up Primarchs. I guess I'll have to do that later. I have so many questions.
With ordinary humans and officials, especially those within the sororitas, the ecclesiarchy, and so on. Many chapters carry rituals and behaviour which can be interpreted as being pseudo-religious. Often this simply marries smoothly with their ordinary indoctrination practices and the rituals of Astartes Brotherhood. But the Dark Angels, their rituals within their chapter carry significant importance and gravity, as these are designed to harden the loyalty and resolve of the Marines who join their number. But of course this simultaneously increases the suspicion of anyone outside looking in who sees a highly secretive closed order who close up ranks as soon as anyone asks too many questions. Only those of the Deathwing and the Raven Wing, the first and second companies of the Dark Angels, truly understand the history of their chapter and legion. And of course the Dark Angels are known for their interrogator chaplains. These are adjacent to the usual battle line company infantry, and their role is specific to the Dark Angels. For their task is in extracting and interrogating information from any suspected fallen angels as and when they're captured alive. They're greatly feared, for obvious reasons, as interrogating a space marine is no small thing. The levels of pain and endurance they can suffer are far beyond that of normal human, and especially a fallen who has been exposed to the darkness of the warp far more potentially than an ordinary Astartes. Interrogator chaplains, though, have an even more difficult task once they've managed to extract any possible information from a fallen marine. They must attempt to secure the repentance of fallen traitors. Understandably, not an easy task, and for good reason, interrogator chaplains are considerably feared. Finally, it would be heretical not to at least mention the current leader of the Dark Angels, Supreme Grandmaster Azrael, also known as the Keeper of the Truth. He not only leads the Dark Angels in battle, but also in their ongoing hunt for the Fallen, and guarding the chapter's terrible secrets, many of which are known only to him and the previous chapter masters before. And for many of those complex secrets, we should consider another day when I will talk specifically about the Dark Angels, because there is a lot more to rake through. My chosen successor chapter of note for the Dark Angels is the Angels of Redemption, primarily because of their curious habit to actually abandon objectives even at grievous cost to their allies should an opportunity to hunt the fallen arise, and they stand as a good example of some of the bizarre oddities that can occur within successor chapters, who for whatever reason, perhaps that they needed to find some core principle to rally around when they were left with no history or heritage to speak of during their founding, is something which happens often with successor chapters. It leads to chapters like the Angels of Redemption, because they're just trying to find something to define them. And because of their now notoriously unreliable nature, many Imperial forces are not particularly quick to accept their aid. The problem in fact became so great that they even faced calls for the chapter to be censured by the Inquisition. But with the emergence of the Great Rift, many such requests were dismissed, sidelined. The clear danger facing the Imperium became so immediately present that many of these things fell by the wayside.
Now for the Blood Angels. Gosh, how far are we into this? We're like almost an hour into this. Huh. I think we might take a small break. I'm gonna grab some more water. And oh man, I'm so tempted. I'm tempted to just look up things that I had questions about. Well, we'll learn it together. I will just give myself a little break here. So, you've returned with Bang Bang Chimkin. I hope you enjoy your food. I will be back in about 5 minutes here. Cause I think I might need to hydrate my eyes too. BRB. Oop. Okay, let's get back into this. Feeling better? Ready to go? Let's cover the Blood Angels.
It seemed fitting next to speak to one of the most closely referenced chapters to the Dark Angels, not only in name but also the fact that they face ongoing problems that they wish to keep out of common knowledge, for reasons of both shame and the scrutiny that would accompany wider knowledge of their internal problems. So we're talking of course about the Blood Angels. The Primarch of the Blood Angels was of course Sanguinius, who famously perished at one of the most pivotal moments in the entire history of the Imperium, the final battle with Horus. Sanguinius was a very unusual Primarch in that he were also a visible mutant, something very commonly shunned or persecuted within the Imperium. He had beautiful, huge wings, which were actually physically part of his body. And mutation was something especially shunned upon the world to which he found himself in the scattering, Baal. Sanguinius spent the first 3 years after his rediscovery with the Lunar Wolves, Horus's legion, and when he was finally reunited with his own legion, the Ninth, he would swear an oath to them rather than the reverse, exclaiming that he wished he could live up to leading his sons to stand with them in glory or damnation. The Blood Angels in the early period of the Crusade were not like the other legions who helped reconquer and unite worlds of humanity. Instead, they were the Destroyers, the legion who acted as an extension of the Emperor's burning blade, scouring and exterminating any foe they were directed to be unleashed upon.
Seems kind of corn-like
which is something
to
very
me.
often not remembered in the contemporary period of the Imperium. In time, though, they were known for sharing some of the other attributes, of course, of their Primarch Sanguinius, who did much to establish the culture of the chapter. He reformed the Blood Angels away from these darker practices that had been emerging in the early Crusade, and would reshape them from an army of killers into a legion of noble warriors that were as well versed in the arts as they were in combat. Many of the Primarchs held traits which overlapped with one another. Sanguinius was second, they say, only to the Emperor in terms of his foresight. He was a beautiful and greatly compassionate individual. He wanted the Imperium to improve life of all mankind and see a lasting end to the strife brought upon by the collapse of human civilization at the close of the Dark Age of
He
technology.
seems like a decent guy.
Despite this constructive outlook, when he was brought to anger, his rage bordered upon that of Angron. When the Emperor chose Horus as his war master, many believed that it should in fact have been Sanguinius, and had that been the case, history may have told a very different tale.
True.
But this was not to be, and Sanguinius saw his powerful foresight as less of a gift than a curse, especially when he would foresee his own death, leading him even to the point of arguing with the Emperor himself that what he had seen must surely come to be, and so he must be allowed to accompany the Emperor when he would board Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, in the final moments of the Horus heresy. And that discussion was interesting to me in several respects, mainly because of the whole issue of time and people believing that you can change future outcomes. Very ordinarily in fictional verses or stories, you see people who learn about the future, something they dislike or don't want to happen, and they make efforts to try and change that. But Sanguinius is accepting of his future fate. He sees what is going to happen, and he remonstrates with the Emperor that this must happen, it must be, because he has seen it to be. And that is an interesting strengthening of the concepts of time and that kind of placement in 40k. The modern chapter of the Blood Angels are led by Commander Dante, who many believe to be the longest serving Space Marine in the Imperium, at over 1200 years.
God, that is
known
the
for
1200
both
years
his
one you were
mercy,
talking
wisdom,
about.
and of course combat skills. He has rebuilt the Blood Angels as many as 4 times over when their chapter had been nearly completely destroyed, and has remained the keystone of their brotherhood for over a millennia. In the contemporary Imperium, he was designated as the Warden and Regent of Imperium Nihilus, but for Dante, his life of long service has taken an immense toll upon him. He is rarely seen to remove his armour or even his helm, many believe because of the ravages of time that have been visited upon his physical form. The Blood Angels are both a glorious beauty to behold in the eyes of mortal humans and a terrifying form of destruction for its enemies. They have come far since their days as the Emperor's burning destroyers and are known for having more care for baseline humans than many other Astartes, who consider themselves often above mere mortals. But for all their glorious achievements in the arts, their ability to govern, their ferocity and ability in battle, similarly to the Dark Angels, they also retain a dark secret, which few in the Imperium know about. This is in fact a disturbing flaw in their genetics, their gene seed, and the Blood Angels know this as
Are they
the
actually
Red
vampires?
Thirst. Sanguinius attempted to find some means by which to cure this trait, but was ultimately unsuccessful, hiding its existence even from the Emperor. And victims who fell to the Red Thirst were sometimes executed by Sanguinius himself, albeit very reluctantly.
They are
In
vampires!
M41, this role is often carried out by their chaplains. So, when afflicted by the Red Thirst, Blood Angels are filled with an intense bloodlust, instilling them with a thirst for, literally, the blood of their enemies.
2 curses, you mean?
Concerningly, though, when affected by this, it can also lead Blood Angels to be so overcome by the frenzy of slaughter, they can end up
I
killing
have
both
so
friend
many
or
questions for you. Okay. because I haven't dived into the Primarchs yet. So you know the nine Primarchs, the 9 legions before the big battle when the Emperor before the Emperor was put on the throne, etc. So they say it's the Emperor's sons, but what do they mean by that? Like, is it like legit like his like DNA descendants, his actual sons? Or is that like more of a title thing? Like, what do they mean by the Emperor's sons? Like, are they literally his sons? And if so, who's the mom? Who's the mom? Or are they just like artificially created sons of the Emperor? Or is it like a half biologically his sons? Like what's the deal with that? Primarchs. 9 of the 9 legions, which later turned into multiple chapters. I don't know. Test tube babies. And another perpetual? Test tube babies. Like only using the Emperor's DNA, or like a mixture of Emperor's DNA and other DNA? It's like, I have so many questions with Stereo. I've been learning lots. Blood angels seem kind of cool. We learned about the freaking where am I? The Dark Angels as well. We learned about the Dark Angels too. And I went over like the basic like kind of like general timeline rundown a bit. So Emperor and Erda. Ooh, Erda. I need to learn more. I'm like knowledge. The lore is deepening. I'm learning so much. I also have questions about like Space Marines, and I also want to learn more about the differences between the Astartes and the Primaris. Because like I just want to know like the differences in the armor and stuff like that. I know that there's more of the seeds in the Primaris and stuff like that. But is it the same kind of seeds that are in the Astartes, or is it different DNA splices there? Like, whose DNA? Because I know it was like the Primarch's DNA before, for the Astartes and stuff. I like. Do you want lore reason or actual reason for the difference? I mean, why not both? There's a lot going on, you know. Also, like I noticed that like a decent amount of Space Marines are sometimes shown with helmet off, but I'm wondering what the like codex about that is. Like, I know sometimes in artwork they're depicted with helmet off versus helmet on in battle. Is there like specific, like, are you only supposed to take off your helmet in specific conditions, or like how often do they just wear their armor for it? Like, or does it get taken off after every battle? Like, I've got so many questions, you know? Emperor gives Primarchs their DNA. Primarchs then share that with the chapter, hence brother. Know the Sisters of Battle, you have to earn the helmet. Okay. Yeah, I want to learn about those females looking almost not I know they're not Space Marines, but they look kind of semi like Space Marines. One of the videos like touched on them as being one of the factions, and I want to learn about them. So I guess I'll get to that later. It's baited on rank and chapter, the helmet thing. It is a show off named characters. Okay. There's a lot.
Or foe, which has led to some successor chapters being very feared for their potential to murder allies as much as an enemy. And there is also an additional gene seed flaw known to the Blood Angels, even more disturbing perhaps than the Red Thirst, and this is known as the Black Rage, or the flaw of Sanguinius. Nearly all chapters derived from the Blood Angels are believed to be able to fall foul to these conditions,
I want to learn
but the
about
Black
them.
Rage is an insanity believed caused in
Space
part
Marines 2, can we play as Battle Sisters? Is there been any games where we can play as Battle Sisters?
by the psychic imprint left by
We're gonna
the
be playing
trauma
Space Marine
of
2 tomorrow.
Sanguinius' death. This pain is said to have been so deep that it effectively
So the Battle
ingrained.
Sisters, do they also worship the Emperor? because you said nuns with guns. Like, so because you're touching on religion here, I'm thinking that they are, do they worship the emperor as well? Because I know like some chapters like worship the emperor, some of them just like revere him or loyal to him. Like some people really like emperor is god, worship, and like some of them are like, nah, he just for the emperor, that's it. You know. And then depending on if like people treat the codex as the Bible or not, you know,
or etched itself psychically upon their gene seed. These are not mere memories that overcome a blood angel when taken by the Black Rage, but something far deeper. They're reborn in a world of anger, hatred, fury, and nothing else. And as well as Sanguinius' memories, the blood angel is touched with a small portion of his actual unearthly power, making them even more.
Age of Strife. Age of Strife. When is Age of Strife? Put that on the timeline for me, because is that the Golden Age, or is that post Emperor on Throne or pre Emperor on Throne? There's a thing called Cult of the Emperor. Battles are the military of the Emperor's church. The church of the Emperor wasn't allowed to raise men for an army, so they got women to fight. Ah, cool. That's cool. They're like, loophole. Loophole.
More powerful and terrifying to face in battle. Unlike the Red Thirst, the Black Rage will allow a Blood Angel a measure of control, but many will still be so maddened with fury and often unable to even distinguish past from present. Sometimes they may even believe that they are Sanguinius upon the eve of his destruction back in the
After the Horus heresy. Okay, gotcha.
Battles raging all around them. Those afflicted in this way, if they're able to retain some composure, join what's called the Death Company. These are a unit of blood angels that are rarely seen because most who face them never live to tell of it, but for those who have, the legend of the Death Company has spread far and wide, and the enemies of humanity greatly fear them for good reason, because many blood angels.
Regular people without the black carapace and a genus seed of the Space Marines, but still badass and strong enough to use power armor and bolters. Oh, that's cool. Have we ever seen a female though with the Geneseed like installed and the carapace installed? Has that been a thing ever? Or is it like not possible? Which I don't mind, because like we've got other like IPs where it's like females are only able to do a specific thing because of the way the DNA sequences work and stuff like that. But Age of Strife was ended with the Emperor rising to power and taking to the stars. It's a controversial thing right now, TBH. Oh, okay. Woman implanted with the gene seed die?
Angels suffering the Black Rage obviously will die in combat. They will fight enemies.
I feel like if we could like lore wise, it would make sense that if there were women that they realized were like infertile, specifically the women were infertile, then like maybe they could become like Space Marines, because they can't serve the purpose of like giving birth to more children to serve as Space Marines. Because then they could still serve for the God Emperor, right? Right? So... like, that would make sense in accordance to what, like, this, you know? It's being thinked about now, okay. I do like that there is like a specific woman badass faction, but I would like there to be like the occasional like exception to the rule as well, just because like exceptions can happen with a lot of other things too. Like in the case of like maybe like a woman from a long succession a family that of Space Marines who you know, once again, cannot serve the purpose of, birthing more children for the family, and instead becomes a space marine so that she can still serve the God Emperor in some way to fulfill her duty to the God Emperor. I feel like that could be a good book, maybe even, right? Should you bring over some Warhammer for me to put together? I don't know if I'd be good at stuff like that. You can't have a long line of Space Marines, but we've heard that like nobles sometimes that like at least they mentioned that like for various foundings sometimes that happens. Only one way to find out. Space Marines do not have working tools, if you know what I mean. I'm just saying like a family that has ended up with multiple family members who have been fit to become Space Marines. I get that they no longer have working tools, but like there might have been like descendants of like, because you have to start off as human first, right? And then later be raised to become Space Marine, right? I get what you're meaning, Angry Fish. I'm just saying that there's probably at least one male who did not become a Space Marine and continued on the genetics that did produce other strong Space Marines. Maybe. But, feel free to correct me if there's a lore reason why this scenario wouldn't work, then, feel free to explain that to me.
Against impossible...
I'm kind of tempted to grab Wisteria on call here so we can talk and watch this together.
Odds. But
Generally,
where they are victorious,
no.
of course, some survive. But this sadly means that they must often be spared the agony of being consumed by the rage, and here is where the High Chaplain, or the Redeemer of the Lost, will bring them their final peace. The cause of these genetic flaws is often debated. Some believe it's even due to Blood Angel's curious practices that involve, well, blood. This is known as insanguination, a process that occurs for the neophytes, the trainees of the Astartes.
Yeah, I get that, because they were saying that like they usually choose people who have like a strong sense of like survival, and they've been on worlds where like the flora and fauna are basically deadly, and they've had to fight to survive their whole life. Are usually good candidates for Space Marines, right? Oh, you can be here physically. I'm a little bit busy after this, but I could just call if you want.
These trainees are individuals who are still undergoing the transhuman conversion to becoming an Astartes, and the procedure is administered by a sanguinary priest.
It'll show on screen.
During insanguination, the gene seed of Sanguinius is implanted into successful...
And in some cases, they just kidnap kids and see which ones survive. Oof.
...neophytes by them simply drinking...
Has there ever been any cloning done to produce Space Marines? Is cloning a technology here? Because like sometimes I think of Space Marines and I think of like, Star Wars Clone Wars and stuff like that.
...from a blood chalice. They fall then into a coma and are entombed by the blood servitors inside caskets of the Hall of the Sarcophagi. They remain there for a full year in care of the casket's life support systems, and while in this state they receive further injections from the blood of Sanguinius.
Oh.
Many will die incapable of bearing the vast changes wrought upon them by the gene seed, but others will wake up too early, growing insane from their dark and claustrophobic existence. Lastly, the ones who are able to completely and successfully adapt to the changes will become the newest additions to the chapter.
It's more likely than you think, Spicy.
So, unsurprisingly, this curious process is one believed cause of the gene seed damage and...
Yeah, I get the gene seed part. It because like the DNA
consequences. Although this entire process sounds very bizarre, it's worth remembering that during the Crusade...
they get extra organs too?
Process of gene seed implantation was still being greatly experimented upon.
Are tech priests always aiding with the help of like becoming Astartes, or is that only in very specific situations? Because I know I've seen like some of that, or they only help with like the creation of other tech priests. Not at all. No. Man, I should just call Wisteria. Give me just a second, you guys. Wham. We need a Lorehammer expert. Ba, 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 ba. Oh, there's a Discord update. Let me update this quickly. Hopefully it goes back to streamer mode right away. I might have to... Yeah, we're good.
Hello.
Hello! I'm just waiting for the Fugi to show up. Do you have Fugi active?
Yeah, Fuji should be active.
Okay,
I should
okay.
be.
It might just be taking a little bit because of YouTube Studio, so...
So let me just make sure. Hey, we're learning about 40K.
Yeah. Maybe if I take off streamer mode, maybe that's why.
Yeah, I will put it on. Yeah, we're on. Yeah, I slipped it over on Fuji Tech to different
One second. I'm just gonna rejoin the call. Hello. Oh, there we go. I've got you on screen now. Yeah, I just took rejoining the call.
Yeah.
I'll make you a bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
You guys! They do the head pat right away. Now I'm gonna have to reset where the Fuki is. Thank you for the head pat, though. It's gonna make Wisteria disappear here. There we go. She back. She back. There we go. We got the cute Yu-Gi-Oh head mistress. Is that
yes?
Yes.
I would say yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh professor. I am Pokemon professor. I do a lot of card games generally for most of my content. I also am big into Warhammer. I do painting streams every so often as well. And yeah, I'm one of Ayumi's 2 big Warhammer friends.
Correct. I do have 2 big Warhammer friends.
Yes.
Okay, I'm also gonna share with you what's I'm gonna do like a screen share.
Yeah, screen share.
Share so I can see what I'm watching. There we go. That should be that there. Wham wham. Let me just let me know if you can hear it.
And legions would often incorporate ritual into this,
Perfect.
which is of course only developed further in the millennia since. Of course, there are also those who might speculate that the Emperor actually had a hand in causing some of the flaws and damage to the genetic material of the Space Marines, because he pushed very aggressively for the fast expansion of the legions during the Crusade to bring up their numbers, and often this is believed to have in part deteriorated the gene seed of many Astartes legions. Despite Belisarius' calls attempting to remove some of the...
It's been created, so...
Does the Emperor just, like, pump out more DNA, you know?
Basically, yeah, the Emperor worked and pumped out the gene seed of the Primarchs, which are basically children of his. And then each of the chapters have a gene seed from the Primarch.
From the 9 Primarchs, yeah. Right? So how did they get the Primarchs gotta pump it out? I thought I was told that they don't have those anymore. I thought they don't have those anymore. I'm just wondering how they collect the DNA. I'm just how they collect the DNA. Is there like a specific process or like ritual or probably something with that, or?
I assume there is a ritual. This would probably we go into a little bit of a sub-chapter's knowledge, which is the Emperor's Children, which had someone called Fabius Bile, who worked a lot with gene seeds.
Okay.
And presumably it's kind of just like a super embryo they inject into people.
Oh, okay.
And feel free to correct me when I'm wrong, Chad, on anything, but I will...
I'm thinking like bone marrow or something, you know what I'm saying? Like...
Yeah, it's more that, more akin to that than it is akin to... They have suddenly steroid injections.
Where did they get the second heart from? Do they just Arvis
They
that
just
some.
have them in there.
So but where do they get it from?
It's just for willing donators.
Willing donators, because everybody loves the Emperor, right? Just like the 1,000 people every day, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just every day. I think
Thank
I'm
you
not
for the
confirmed
follow.
on this one, but they might be that they grow the additional organs as well for redundancy because it's been built into the gene seed.
Oh,
Instead of being
yeah, because
donated.
then it matches the DNA of the gene seeds, right?
Yeah, so as funny as it is for there to be a bunch of donors giving extra hearts and that, it would be matching what
Unless
the
they're just growing
gene seed
full
was.
on like bodies with a bunch of different body parts, which would be kind of maybe more productive depending on how many body parts and organs they use. If they're just like,
Honestly, because Warhammer is so far-reaching and allows you to put in your own fluff in areas, you could easily see a custom chapter of
oh,
Space
is
Marines
that why
where their
is
gene
there like
seed
a
was
lot of
deficient.
conflicting things in the books then, because there's multiple different
Yes.
authors?
There is no single line of you can't say that this is the one truth about Warhammer 40k. There's so many alternate interpretations of everything and different
So
narrators.
kind of like the Marvel extended universe, like there's different universes, or more like,
Exactly.
interesting.
Yes. So yeah, there's no can be just one specific thing. Like there could easily be a Space Marine chapter that their gene seed doesn't give people extra hearts, so they raise people in vats to implant the extra hearts. That could easily be a thing in 40k.
That could easily be a thing, for sure. But you were saying, what was it like? You mentioned another person when I asked who would the mom
Fabius
was.
Bile, right?
Huh?
Was that when I mentioned Fabius Bile?
No, I was asking who the mom was. If the Emperor's the dad of the sons.
We don't really know.
Okay.
And I don't know specifically, and I'm pretty
Erda,
sure
someone said.
Oh, Erda. Yeah. It's a figure that we don't know much about. I haven't read any of the accounts of it specifically, so I couldn't say for sure on it, but yeah.
These flawed genetics of Astartes chapters originating from their legion's heritage, he would discover, or at least has stated, that for those from
She's
the
an
9th
older
and
lore,
the 6th legions, that's the Blood Angels and the Space Wolves, the genetic abnormalities are in fact very critical to their proper functioning. Specifically why is not explained, but essentially Call is saying, trust the Emperor's genius. The Blood Angels, as a chapter, are quite literally defined by their chapter title. Their storied history is both one of glory and tragedy, which continues into the time of M41, with the likes of Mephiston, the Sanguiner, Astorath, but their dark shame leaves them tainted seemingly for all time, for all of their laudable characteristics.
It feels like, to me, like, Warhammer's done an excellent job of keeping like classical painters alive, if that makes sense, because of some of the like very almost like Renaissance style like art and stuff like that, like very like painted and beautiful like artworks that I keep seeing, you know?
There is definitely a streak of especially Catholicism and the artwork that kind of comes from the religion that's very strong in Warhammer.
Yeah, it's just it's incredibly beautiful pieces like that we get out of the Warhammer fandom. So it's really nice. Stop head patting me! You have to move with stereo over again. I am pausing the head pat regime. Thank you for the head pat though. I appreciate it. I'm gonna pause the redeem when I have people on because I don't have it set up to just cancel out the just the head pat. As you can see, when I press my button that I usually get to stop the head pat, it goes whoop, and no, she's gone. She's gone. No, now she's at the other side of the screen. I gotta go grab her.
What am I doing over here? I'm about to get shot.
There we go. You want to sit on my booba? No,
it's comfy.
It would be comfy, but I'm gonna put you
over
here.
Put me down there. Yeah, that's
beside me. Yeah. Perfect. Let me open it back up the video, and there we go.
They always remain, similarly to the Dark Angels, the Angels of Death. My chosen successor chapter of note for the Blood Angels? Quite obviously, the Flesh Tearers. because they're a
Flesh
well-known
tearers.
successor chapter, but most interestingly because they're not known to utilize the genetic inception process used by the Blood Angels, known as insanguination. This is believed to be due to the fact that the Flesh Terrors, for whatever reason, seem to suffer more greatly from the Red Thirst and the Black Rage, so much so that it has in fact almost entirely destroyed their chapter. They also gained a reputation for at times turning upon allies, and even they themselves
If it
grew
weren't
so
for like the Red Thirst being part of that whole like the Sanguinitas guy, he seems pretty cool, and like if he had been the one put in charge instead of
Horus?
yeah, then like, you know, we might have had a very different timeline. Plus he's kind of hot with, you know, his like muscles and the angel wings and stuff, you know?
Oh, way hotter.
He's way hotter, you know.
Horus was fighting so hard for Dad's attention, though.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. And then, you know, also, like, they're like, oh, here's the mutated, and I'm expecting to see something really ugly. I'm like, oh, he just had really pretty angel wings. Okay. You're like, oh, okay. Angel vampire, dude.
Angelic vampire
Angelic
space marine.
vampire space marine. Man, and guys get upset when we're like, ooh, vampires, and they have their own like vampires, like, ooh, vampires too.
Concerned with this, that they no longer fight
There's a classic
alongside
40k
others.
artwork I'll bring
Their
up
chapter
here
has
for
been
you.
steadily deteriorating both in terms of their hardware capability and manpower, not to mention their numbers continually being lost to their flawed gene set.
I'm sure they're super
With the arrival
thirsty
of the
for blood
Primaris,
with Red
however,
Thirst.
it
Like,
did
you see
bring
how
some
much blood and gore is, like, on just the battlefield in terms of Warhammer. I wonder if the Red Thirst is only for human blood, though, or, like, if that applies to some of the alien species and subspecies that we deal with. That's definitely a question I have.
No, I think it's supposed to be human specifically for the lore of it. So
Yeah. Probably. One sec, I need to plug something in quickly. I'm running low on battery for my iPhone. Learn about Warhammer. It's easy to dive in, they said.
there's infinite lore.
It was very hard. Like, the first videos that Tech linked me was not a good, like, starting point. And so now I'm finally on the videos that Tech linked me, going through those. But, like, I had to go, okay, 1 minute introduction to Warhammer. Okay, like, Warhammer Lord 1 minute. Okay, I got the basics down. Okay, next I watched a 9-minute video on, like, the war, like, you know, basics of Warhammer. Then we watched a 20-minute overview. And now we're on to, like, an hour 32-minute videos. Like, I had to rank up because, like, there was if I had started just at this one, which is the first one I was given by Tech in the list of videos he gave me, it would have been like, I didn't understand any of like the like definitions or like the lingo they were using or like anything at all, and I was just like severely confused because they were going into just details on like the start of the Emperor like forming the 9 legions and stuff like that, and so it was just like too much info dump all at once. but now I'm here, and now we're getting through it.
We caught up a little bit.
We caught up a little bit. I've got like a base understanding of things, but the more I learn, the more I'm like, wait, what does that mean? What is this thing? and they're calling this like a beginner's guide, and I'm like, this is not a beginner's guide.
People don't get it. I have linked you one of the biggest, like, probably more well-known pieces of Warhammer artwork, which is Horus vs. the Emperor, but specifically Sanguinus is also in this picture.
Okay, let me take a look here. Ooh. Yeah, I think they've referenced this one a few times, I think, with him being down there. He's the one dead right there, right?
Yeah, he's down there. If you notice, that's like the Blood Angel's little teardrop.
Yeah. What are these big eyes that I see on like the armor? Do those represent?
The one on saying what they are basically the Eye of Horus was a symbol of it was an award, a medal. They
Okay.
they ended up getting a special medal, and it was the Eye of Horus, but it was because it was coming from the Horus's end of things, which was starting to become more and more corrupted by chaos as
Yeah.
time went on. So at the start and beginning of it, it was just a symbol that was given out by Horus as being one of the heads of the Legion to provide the to as a symbol of honor, and then slowly started becoming a corrupted symbol.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's some good artwork. Look at the Emperor and all his glory there. So ethereal and strong.
Yes, this is very much one of the more Christ-like interpretations, artworks of the Emperor. I think, especially when you have Sanguine on the ground there with the angelic wings, the broken
Yeah.
sword on the steps.
He's still got the halo too over his head as well. So it's very, very. I've like I see like a lot of parallels between like a lot of religious parallels between a lot of the Warhammer lore, definitely. For quite a few stuff, just like in the way like the God Emperor is revered and the Codex and everything else.
Very much so.
Chapels and chapters and you know.
It's very interesting because at the core of it, originally with Warhammer, it was fairly satirical. And I believe that a lot of the early design of these was actually to kind of poke fun at that religious art. But as 40K took on an identity of its own, it wasn't just satirical anymore, and it started becoming actually what this is now, to being one
Do
of the
you think
largest
there are
franchises in the
people
world.
out there who legitimately like worship the God
Yes.
Emperor?
Oh yeah, people register themselves as a Jedi on like those
I
religious
remember
checks.
that.
And this is something where people could get a lot more
My dad on
fanatical about.
Facebook had himself labeled as a Sith, but you know,
It's-
that was just
there's
like as a
that-
funny joke, though.
I think there is that joke bit to it, but there's also very much a serious like people could
But
really
we know
go
how
into this
serious
more.
our
It's
tech
like,
priest friend is about like his
very much so.
you know, the divine machine and all that, right?
Yeah, yeah, the Deus Ex Machina, God of the Machine.
Definitely interested in learning more about that, but I got to get my base Warhammer stuff done.
Mars is a whole other situation to get into, and the battle between Earth and Mars is an eternal battle in Warhammer.
Because it seems like the tech priests were also used by the Emperor and the Legionaries as well, like you know.
Yeah, they were used by them, and at times, basically the empires of Earth and Mars at different time periods were stronger than the other. And actually, in the current time period of Warhammer 40K, I would argue that Mars is stronger than Earth at this point because of the Mechanicum is who holds all the technology right now.
And then a lot of the technology has been lost after the Emperor's supposed, not death, right?
Yeah,
so because people focused on religion and upholding the current instead of pushing forward the new, which is why when the Primaris was introduced, people were like, "What the fuck?" at first, right?
Yeah, that's when the return of the Primaris is really big.
Because they felt like you've messed with the Emperor's like like original plan and layout, like you've changed. So yeah, that's which kind of just reflects some kind of real world issues with when it comes to like religions and stuff like that, and not wanting to adapt to modern times with certain policies, etc. We won't dive into, but there is some like correlation here.
Yeah, I think the big one to draw onto is the Dark Ages, the medieval Dark Ages.
Yeah,
and that way we don't go into any modern political issues, but that was an era that we can all agree was fairly tied into this idea.
Yeah, definitely. And then the Renaissance finally happening and technology.
And that's what we're kind of seeing a little bit in 40K right now with the newer fluff, as it's been they've actually
if we view like 40K right now, it's 42 technically right now, we're in 42. and we're just about to reach Renaissance in terms of like real world time, then how long will it take 40k to get to modern era today in terms of if we make that comparison?
I just saw Steve Jobs in power armor for some reason.
Steve Jobs in power armor.
That's all I can see is just like a tech bro.
Like, are we gonna have like a Warhammer like AI cult kind of thing, you know, like or a cult, like an AI chapter, the chapter that's like AI based, or are we gonna have the Alexa chapter?
The Alexa chapter.
Alexa chapter.
Yeah, instead of, you know, being the god of the machine, they just praise God GPT.
No. They believe that the Emperor's will is enacted through Alexa.
Beautiful.
Anyways, we should get back to the video.
Yeah, sorry for the distraction.
All good, all good. Welcome distraction. There's just a lot to unpack with this lore, and sometimes a little break is nice.
To the
Praise
flesh
Apple.
Not eradicating the gene seed flaws, certainly, but it did reduce
AI
their
is
losses,
the brand in
which
the
for a small
Imperium.
chapter
Is
who was on
banned
brink
in
of
the
collapse
Imperium.
was no bad thing that you
Yes,
might
it
imagine.
is.
But you would imagine wrongly, in fact.
Because
Chapter
I
Master
do not
Gabriel
want to
Seth
see any. I haven't seen any, and I hope we never see any AI art in Warhammer. That could easily go into inaccuracies. That would be like lore inaccurate, right? What country am I
easily.
from? Both Wisteria and I here are from Canada.
was in fact not
Canada.
impressed at all by the Primaris. Their slightly
There is-
increased
oh, I'm
resistance
sorry to hear
the
that.
flaws, in fact, left them in the eyes of veteran flesh terrors as not representative of their chapter. This, in fact, remains and illustrates one of the curiosities about factions of the Imperium, where strange traits, even negative ones, become so heavily embedded in the ritual and identity of these factions, it literally defines their group. In the case of the Flesh Terrors, their shortened lives led them to a more fatalist outlook, and for any coming in who
Chainsaw
are unable to
blades.
share this, it puts them at odds with the veterans of the chapter. For the Flesh
I
Terrors,
love them.
having existed so long, being defined by this blind raging combat,
Because of the way the proportions are on this particular figure, he looks like a little chibi, and it's kind of cute. Because of the proportions of like the head to body. Because normally, like when I view Space Marines, that head would be at least 20% smaller to show how big the armor is. But because his head is so blown up in this, it makes it feel like it's a chibi model.
They've improved on sculpts over the years, but there's some very derpy figures out there.
Derpy figures.
their
No
shorter
AI, only Surfo Skull.
lives, the Primaris Marines risk upsetting that, and it leaves them searching for almost a new identity. And this has been an ongoing problem in terms of integrating new Primaris Marines into chapters like the Flesh Terrors, who have such curious identities.
The Iron Hand. Ooh.
Next, we have the Iron Hands. Now, the Iron Hands are actually quite an interesting first founding chapter, but they never seem to get as much interest
That
or
one has an
attention
axe.
as
Let's
some
go.
others. I've always thought this is due to the
Chainsaw
fact
axe,
that they
of
don't have
course.
quite the same gravitas that the likes of the Imperial Fists, Ultramarines and Blood Angels do. I think they also live in the shadow of the Iron Warriors because of their shared naming convention, but then also because the Iron Warriors are just so infamous for being traitors who engage in some of the most
So after I've watched a decent amount of this lore, and I just want to get this thought out now, I feel like Tech has tricked me into becoming a heretic because he only taught me about the Chaos Gods at first, and wanted me to be Cornate because he's like, you're a Cornate, and I'm like, I am, and he's like, you're a Cornate, and I'm like. Now I'm just like, oh, but the Emperor. I can't be a heretic. I gotta the Emperor.
Yes, Emperor.
The Emperor.
Yeah, depending on how you look at it, the Chaos Gods are kind of like natural forces in the world.
They
or
are.
universe.
They are. Because
So
like
they're
they're basically saying that like the chaos gods are attracted to like those human emotions that we go through, kind of like, you know, the 7 deadly sins in a lot of religious scripture, you know, things like that. So, but obviously too much of chaos is bad for anyone. So like, I would say there are some principles of Khorne that I would align with, but I don't like every single faction is evil in some way, apparently. Like everybody, hidden friend here keeps on saying there's no good guys in Warhammer.
There really isn't any good people. Like, there's good people, but there's no good, like, guys.
There is no good guys. Like, I was thinking at first, like, one of those alien ones, they seem to, like, they try to, like, you know, make people, like, oh, peace a little bit, but then apparently there's some other bad shit with them, too, that I need to learn about. It was one of the newer alien factions. Like, I forgot what they're called.
The Tau.
The Tau, yeah. Because I'm like, oh, they don't seem too bad. But then they didn't deep dive on it, and people are saying that once you deep dive on the Tau more, then there's a lot of fucked up shit. Apparently.
Yeah, and really, is there any, like, in any of our situations,
if you think about it, like,
power?
If we were an alien race to, like, do a deep dive on humanity as a whole, there's a lot of fucked up shit about humans. I'll just tell you that much. There is no purely good things in Warhammer or the world in general. If you were to generalize into a particular group of people or race, or not race, sorry, no, yeah, human, as in the
culture
human race,
would be the best
culture,
one.
or like, you know, because like you think about like even like elves, not all elves are good, not all humans are good, not all, you know, insert any fantastical mythical race of any sort, and like there's nothing is ever purely good, and if it has been made to be purely good in that work of fiction, etc., then it's for kids. And it's made for kids. It's simple as that. Or it's just highly unrealistic in that sense. So if anything, what we can learn about this is judge people on a person by person basis. Yeah, cool.
Most abhorrent heresy, the horror of which is just retained in people's minds more prominently. Lastly, similarly to the Raven Guard, the Iron Hands were nearly destroyed at the outbreak of the heresy, and that's something that took a considerable amount of time to bounce back from. But the Iron Hands are interesting as a chapter.
But I would say don't judge people based on like what factions and stuff they like in Warhammer either, because some people could just be like, I like this thing because it looks cool, or I like the weapon they use, or I like the colors of their banner, or I just find their lore interesting. So you just got to be careful with things like this, because we got to keep in mind at the end of the day, Warhammer, we don't need to discuss the morals of every single faction or anything. It's more about just enjoying the world building and the story building and playing the game and the lore and everything else like that. So
it's the collaborative nature of a huge and just like social projects like Warhammer is that everyone has their parts and everyone should be contributing and everyone should be welcome.
For sure. The lore most good faction is the Tyranids. Fuck no. Fuck no. Fuck that. Oh, I noticed that like every single like IP that has like bugs in it as like a race, they're always evil. Like, can you think of one bug race of like that's not painted as evil in some way?
Well, my brain goes initially to thinking about Robert A. Heinlein, Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
And the idea there...
Oh. Go ahead.
Oh, the idea there is that they portray the bugs as evil because the nation, like the people, the good guys in the story are fascists. And so they portray them as being evil, but like in that story, it kind of like, actually, they're not really. But, you know, that always changes about in different media.
Yeah. But you're like, it's like, you know, we got Helldivers, we got Warhammer, we got like Destiny with like, you know, the Hive and stuff too. It's just like, it's always bugs bad. Like, poor bugs. That, like, I don't hate bugs, but I don't like bugs either. So I'm just like, that it'd be interesting to see something with like a more good guy bug species or like
Halo is a
people.
little bit arguable in that
Arguable,
the
yeah, a little bit.
like the bugs have all come together to work together to try and make a big nation, but like of course it has its issues too.
Yeah. Okay.
In some respects, they themselves
I
have
don't know enough
confused
about
their
like
own history.
intricate Halo lore,
The Iron
unfortunately.
Hands follow an ideological outlook of self-reliance. This is in part why they lean towards fairly heavy body augmentation and cybernetic modification. The homeworld their Primarch Ferrus Manus found himself upon was brutal and unforgiving in its environmental conditions, but unlike so many of his brothers, Manus did not conquer the world of Medusa.
It's not about them being evil, but they are the enemy, is what I'm mainly saying. Like, they are the enemy. It'd be nice to see, like, a peaceful bug, you know, thing where we're either allied with them or they're just, like, a neutral, peaceful, like, race in a game or a series, you know? Like, but it's always, like, an enemy in some way.
Classified as a
regardless
death
of
world,
how
it
it
is also
became an enemy.
categorized as an imperial waste world. Its atmosphere is dense, surface pressure many times that on Terra, and the air is barely breathable. Its atmosphere is so clouded that the system's sun rarely penetrates to ground level, consequently...
I think this comes from, like, just humans having a fear of bugs because we are in a power over bugs for the most part as humans for so long that, like, we are afraid of something so small. If it were big, they would definitely want to kill us because we always kill them. Right?
You can definitely read that.
You can read it. You can definitely read it as that into it.
Surface temperatures are rarely much higher than being above freezing.
Who are we listening to? This is what's this YouTuber name? Let me just quickly. Louiton09.
On top of this, of course, continual extreme storms rack the surface of the planet. It is, though, a planet known to the Mechanicus to be rich in rare elements and other ancient technological relics of interest. It though remains an extremely inhospitable world, and its population roam the planet in huge machines containing the clans of the descendants of the ancient colonists from the Dark Age of technology. The conditions are so difficult that maintaining population is a challenge in and of itself, and the entire planet's population is believed to be little more than 500,000 individuals, a tiny fraction of most Imperial worlds. Ferrus Manus took much from his homeworld, a sense of survival, an approach to war that he would instill into his Astartes, and of course his living metal hands, the story of which is honestly so mythical it...
Is there a reason why they will say Astartes instead of like Space Marines?
Usually, well, Astartes is kind of more the technical term for it. It's the same way as the Sisters of Battle or Adepta Sororitas.
Oh, okay. Is it just like I guess it's just like saying the like it's like saying a medical term versus a slang term, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I guess technically both Astartes and Primaris are both Space Marines, or well, I guess the other one's okay. Wait, is Primaris Ultra Space Marines, or is Ultra Space Marines a specific faction with?
Well, there's the Ultramarines that are so Primaris is like a kind of a new breed of Space Marine.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah. And so they're getting integrated into the old chapters, which were, of course, the Astartes.
As well as there's new chapters, specifically Primaris ones too.
Yeah, there would be new Primaris chapters, as well as benefiting like all these old ones getting a bunch of new troops.
Oh, Ultramarines are the 13th Legion? 13, you say? 13, you say?
Oh.
I have to look into that. That's my number. That's my number. That's my number.
Like, can be rationalized. But Manus killed
Astartes usually just means Space Marines, maybe a bit more of an antiquated term for meaning more ancient history.
Which he eventually killed by submerging it in magma. Its metallic liquid formed around his hands, and many have speculated as to just what this thing was. Some even speculate including Necron origin, or of course the warp. But nobody really knows. It's a confusing story and there's very little information. There is only one small other scrap of information that seems potentially relevant, in that Medusan folklore might indicate a lingering Necron presence on the world as late as the Age of Strife. Regardless though, Manus' time on Medusa formed him and his outlook. And for the Iron Hands and himself, the sense of self-reliance was a very strong foundation for the Legion, and then the chapter. They believed in...
So when it comes to the amount of Warhammer books, are there some books that are like, people are like, no, this book is bad, it's not accurate or anything, like we don't believe in this book, or in like other books that are more revered or seen as like true and
There's
more
definitely
canonical?
some authors that are considered far more canonical. Like Dan Abnett is one of the big prolific writers of. He tends to get given a lot of the big projects.
Does Warhammer itself though, like kind of like say, hey, this author, everything he writes is real, or like do they like ever like give like?
Yeah. Because of that nature of, I kind of brought it up earlier when I first jumped on here, where they kind of just accumulate everything. There's just stories and mythos about everything.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really go out denying any specific like sections of any sort of lore. Like there's not just like they've gone back and things will get retconned all the time because there's 4 or 5 books coming out, I'd say, in a month.
So everything Black Library is canon, they say.
Yeah, so all that Black Library is canon, but you know, then there's 4 or 5 different authors writing books as well as all this extra other lore. Things get contradictory and things get meshed up and confusing, but that's part of the appeal of Warhammer.
It's unfortunate that Destiny has not treated their fandom the best in terms of recent years, because I feel like it definitely had the potential to be like a lore heavy IP that could have had like lots of books and stuff like that.
Oh, easily.
With the amount of like world building, different various races, planets, etc., and a lot of like backstory when it comes to like the Traveler and everything else like that. I'm sorry to break into Destiny stuff. I was into Destiny for so long, so
yeah. Destiny I see as being kind of successor to 2 series or a couple series like Halo and Mass Effect, which I think Destiny pulls a lot from.
Yes, definitely.
And those are starting to hit that like kind of expanded universe, but never quite.
But then Andromeda
there,
happened.
Didn't get there. Yes. Then Andromeda happened, and no one remembers Mass Effect. Wow.
Yeah. Oof.
In strong, clear planning, a logical approach, but also using the fury of battle to good effect, and this had brought them great success throughout the Crusade. But the heresy would be the defining moment for the Iron Hands, and in a way one that they would never fully recover from. They believed in this balance of combat, and they were one of the 3 legions to suffer major losses at the outset of the now infamous drop site massacre on Isfahan. The horrendous casualties suffered by the Raven Guard, Salamanders and Iron Hands were devastating enough, but the additional death of Ferrus Manus at this time and his entire retinue broke the Iron Hands completely.
You love the Tau weapons?
Not only was it at a surface level just deeply traumatic to the Iron Hands, but it also left them with no answers as to how such a thing could have happened. Their battle doctrine was so solid in their minds, its failure was incomprehensible. The more they considered the situation and the result, the worse their doubts, their confusion and their frustration grew. Some blamed the traitors, some their...
Also, is the Astartes Codex something we have, like, the full, like, codex of? Like, you could just read the codex?
I cannot tell you if there has been a codified, like, text of it. I know that the infantryman's uplifting primer has been done, but I don't know if the Astartes Codex has. It probably has.
Okay. There is, okay.
Yes, there is.
Okay. The Codex is a rules book. Yeah.
Fellow legions, some themselves. Others went insane or turned renegade. The survivors of the disaster here are often referred to now as the Shattered Legions, for these 3 had suffered the worst at the hands of the traitors' betrayal and treachery. Many Iron Hands formed together into forces that were...
Is that just because the Codex has been rewritten by specific chapters? Is that what you mean by there being 5 codex? Because, like, I know that the original codex, apparently, like, some people followed it, some people took it as, like, you know, gospel, like, as in, like, worshipping, basically following it like a Bible, and then, like, some people are like, oh, these are just guidelines. So.
Their time hunting traitors and butchering them without mercy. Many in time came to blame the disaster upon Ferrus Manus' rage, that he was overcome by his emotions, and that this was what led to a weakness which caused their defeat. This evolved into a more cold, calculating approach to all situations, they would place logic and precise calculation above emotional decisions and following their gut instincts, even in adopting their battle cry of "the flesh is weak."
The codex of the rulebooks
Many,
for the
though,
tabletop comment. Imagine being like, actually, my chapter takes the codex as a guideline and just like breaking all the rules while you're playing the tabletop, and be like, no, it's a guideline. We don't need to follow this rule here. I'm just gonna move my unit here, and I'm gonna attack out a turn. Don't worry about it. Just use it's like me when I got into Yu-Gi-Oh again for the first time. I'm just like, yeah, I can summon like three blue eyes dragons in one turn, right? You know, like at Kaiba, I'm just gonna Kaiba it, you know, like not actually being like, Heart of the Cards, because you watch the show and you're just like,
Yeah,
this looks like a totally valid legal move, yeah.
See that the tragedy of the Iron Hands is all too apparent, that they in fact bury their true feelings beneath this shield of dispassionate mantras and cold ritual, yet below their armour and their augmetics remains that same pride and wrath that led Manus to his death. For all that has bound them together since the trauma of the heresy, it appears that in that state of raging distress and making whatever rationalizations were necessary to explain away the tragedy that fell upon them, they may have fundamentally misunderstood the phrase of "the flesh is weak."
The flesh is
Ferrus Manus himself said that the weak must be purged in order for humanity to survive, and the will of the Iron Hands must be as steel, their resolve as adamantium. These are the lessons learned from a harsh world such as Medusa, but it certainly led also to their later confusion. The actual origin of the phrase, which is their battle cry, "the flesh is weak," was in fact not spoken by Ferrus Manus, but by the Salamanders primarch Vulcan, who was heard to say it in praise of Ferrus Manus. After
interesting.
a brutal liberation in the Crusades of a world that had been consumed by the Orc menace, Manus jokingly exclaimed to Vulcan how his arm was tired from killing so many orcs, and it was Vulcan who replied with, "The flesh is weak." But this was not the whole quote. Vulcan actually said, "The flesh is weak, but deeds endure." So the quotation was not one of cynical condemnation of humanity's flaws, it was in fact a more positive message that sought to clarify that even primarchs will eventually pass into history.
You know what that reminds me of? That one, I'm trying to think, like the blood of the covenant versus water of the womb kind of thing. Like,
yes.
Like a lot of time, like that full quote is they only say the part of it, but if you say the full amount, it has a whole different meaning. Like
there's quite a few of those out there. That's what there's an example.
Yeah. It's very similar to like this misconstruing where they've only said part of the quote, but if you say the full quote, it has a whole different like meaning to it. Yeah.
But their actions, their deeds, the consequences of what they achieve now will last for millennia. It was a message of humility that even those with lifespans such as the Astartes and the Primarchs should take upon and self-reflect, realize that their actions are but one moment that will form a greater legacy of humanity. It's certainly true to summarize that the Iron Hands' overarching goal for their chapter since the second founding has been survival, just as it is with the Raven Guard and the Salamanders. The survival of themselves, the survival of humanity in the Imperium, they see themselves as a single cog in the machine of the Imperium and must carry out their role as perfectly as possible. They follow the Codex Astartes quite strictly, but they do also blend this with some of their own Medusan culture, with each battle company being designated with the names of their ancient homeworld clans instead of a numerical designation. As a final interesting note, in the Iron Hands, the position of Chapter Master is not one held for life.
I kind of learned is that we all just really like really big shoulder armor.
Pauldrons are life.
Pauldrons, like, think about it. World of Warcraft, Warhammer, just really big, unrealistic pauldrons. Like, I'll tell you, someone who is just straight up made cosplay armor. Pauldrons, once you make them past like the size of your actual shoulder, they're really stupid. They don't move very good at all. like it's very it's very not great. Obviously these guys have lore on why they can move so well, because basically their armor acts like will reflexly move like with because of the that special skin that they have. What's it called?
The black carapace.
The black carapace. Like there's lore reasons as to why they can basically have the exact same reaction time wearing armor versus not wearing armor. But yes, but they look cool.
And tabletop reasoning, it's easy to pick up the figures because they have big shoulders.
Oh yeah, I guess so, yeah. But think about Warhammer, like that makes no sense for a lot of like the Warhammer like pauldrons to be that big. Especially even on like smaller like light armored characters, they still make the pauldrons really big. On everything. I guess because of that fantasy look, it kind of differentiates between having like soldiers that look like modern or future or old soldiers versus a fantasy setting. Like a fantasy sci-fi is really the size of the pauldrons really determine that. Professor Chico, thank you for the follow. Welcome on in. So I think that's the easiest way to tell how fantasy based an IP is. For example, Destiny, I feel like they try to go more sci-fi, but you see they still have big pauldrons on the Titans, so you can tell that it's still very fantastical, you know, like because there's big pauldrons still in there. As much as the hunters will still have like, you know, more realistic looking armor, you still got the very big pauldrons and some of like the special armors as well as the Titans.
Yeah, this is Cataphract armor, but we don't need to get into specific different hooks.
It doesn't matter. All the Space Marines have big shoulders.
Chapters.
Big pauldrons.
It is an elective
look at this! Look at the big. It's huge.
As the Iron Council deems necessary. So the very fact that
I got it. Space Marines don't have, so they have to make up with the size of their pauldrons, right? right. That's what they're gonna like. They can't flaunt their size, so they have to make do with their pauldron size.
So pauldrons are just truck nuts.
Has led them for longer than any other speaks for itself. More interesting is the fact that he doesn't shun emotion as weakness, but the results under his leadership speak for themselves.
Exactly, they just don't have them, so they got pauldrons.
Defying its own logical reasoning to remove him merely on the principle of finding his own outlooks distasteful. Not to mention the fact that Strenos is a deeply selfless and humble individual, going so far as to even outlaw the raising of statues in his likeness, even the commemoration of his own deeds. But in one of the few instances that have recorded his words, it speaks volumes to his level of understanding and guidance provided now for the Iron Hands chapter, and undoubtedly one that their Primarch would have been proud of. For it reads, "With steel we are stronger, but without a soul we are nothing."
Oh.
My chosen successor chapter of the Iron Hands are the Red Talons. The Red Talons being actually one of my favourite successor chapters, simply for the fact that they are brutally unrelenting and have scored win after win against the traitors. So successful even that they were charged several times by the Lords of Terror with hunting down and destroying renegade spacemen.
That is like Canadians. We do war crimes. Think about it. For the reason that there are rules to war now. Our war crimes made like they weren't war crimes before we did them, but they became war crimes after. There are no war crimes in 40K. I don't know about that. They're like, you guys are doing too much.
In chapters. The most curious thing about them, though, is that their chapter master was, and according to Imperial records still is, an infamous heresy veteran, Ortek Moore. A Terran-born, he was always seen as one of the more unstable among his brothers in the Legion, and in the aftermath of the disaster at Isfahan, Moore lost all focus of broader goals and began commanding a roughly gathered Iron Hand strike force, who then launched a brutal campaign primarily targeting traitor recruitment and resource-producing centres.
I think I'm dead. Well, I'm sleepy, but I'm dead. Give me a sec here. I might need to change over to the other iPhone. Yeah, I think I need to get a different charging cord. My previous iPhone charging cord is just like dead. And apparently,
Yeah.
they're known to just die after a year. I'm not used to that because I mainly use like Android phones for my like actual phone. Obviously, because of VTuber tech, or like not obviously to some, but you know, obviously there's the people who know because of VTuber tech. I need to use an iPhone because that gets the best possible tracking for the AR kit, which allows me to do like the cheek puff and the realistic mouth movements and all that.
My cord is being used really hard though. Like what it is being, so I get the wear and
Yeah,
tear
phone
on
died.
it. But a year? That seems low.
Yeah, it seems very low, but I guess because of like, you know, with iPhones, like they come out with so many versions, and their most prevalent customers are the type who will get a new phone every year, pretty much. You know,
There is a bit of planned obsolescence
Yeah,
in the
but
product design.
which I don't like. I'm sure a lot of people don't like, but you know, it is what it is. Give me a moment. We're just gonna switch over the tracking program here. I have to go into my iPhone settings to make sure we have the right IP. Okay, and then put it back in the holder. We're almost there.
She's moving.
I'm moving now, but I just gotta get it in place and then recalibrated. Uh-oh. I'm pressing a button while it's in the holder. Gotta move that over a bit. What? There we go. We're good. Also, thank you for the twin tail redeem. We looking cute. Make sure I have the correct thing up. There we go.
It's hard to underscore just how unhinged the
I'm very
assaults
lucky I have
were
two.
by more.
The
They
reason I
included
have
the
two is so
nuclear
that
destruction of cities, the
if I'm switching from like say a 3D stream to a 2D stream, we essentially have two phones because like the newer one that I have is the iPhone 13 mini, so it's very lightweight and good for use with when I'm wearing a head mounted camera. So if I'm mounting it to the head mount thing I have that allows me to like use it while I'm like standing up and dancing and stuff like that, it's like lightweight, which I already have a counterweight on this like contraption that I put on my head, but you need the phone to be relatively lightweight for it to not like, you know, give you massive headaches or neck pain. Yeah, that's important.
It's definitely a contraption. I love it.
Technology.
Using of the world eaters,
Yeah, Wisteria's seen me in it.
world
It's
of
a little
Bod
silly,
at the
but it
turn
works.
of M31 by shunting no less than a moon into the planet before then assaulting it, and other events of orbital scouring. For Ortag Moore, there were no innocent civilians in the conflict with the traitors. There were only loyalists prepared to die for the Emperor. Moore became the chapter master of the Red Talons, formed with the most aggressive, unstable members of the Iron Hands. Yet they lack for no shortage of hardware, despite their aggressive nature.
Wow, mental health, the chapter.
They are particularly well equipped, retaining also the calculating nature of the Iron Hands to full effect, making them, from an overall perspective, a terrifying chapter to face.
Oh, now the Salamanders. I've
Yeah.
been hearing them like in like talks a lot, so now I get to actually find out about the Salamanders. So
Now, if you want anything that can be considered good among the Space Marines,
yeah,
here they are.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Lizards.
Next we come to another of the Shattered Legions, the Salamanders. They suffered as did the Iron Hands and the Raven Guard at the outbreak of the heresy. To some, clearly they are very terrifying. An ordinary human looking upon an Astartes
Good
of
guys
the
that burn
Salamanders
children?
would rightly feel
What?
overcome, awed, likely averting their gaze, and for good reason. They're an awesome sight to behold, bright green armour dripping in gold and illustrations of the scales, flame and drakes that symbolise their heritage. Yet their intimidating appearance does not align with their character. As the Salamanders are known as one of the most selfless, compassionate of Astartes, they'll go to considerable feats of endurance and risk to ensure that human lives are well preserved. The Salamanders' home world of Nocturne is a rugged and mountainous planet of ferocious volcanic activity, along with high levels of natural radiation. This crucible
Oh,
environment means that those
you meant non-human children. That's fine, right?
who
You meant
not dissimilarly
non-human
to those of
children.
the Iron Hands
It's fine.
very capable people. Their natural environment is not the only danger, though. Like many Imperial worlds, there are also the native life forms to contend with, and for Nocturne, this means the monstrous Saurian forms. And this was of course what would become their legion and chapter symbols, an immense beast said felled by Vulcan's own hand. The culture and values of Nocturne's people were instilled in Vulcan as he rapidly rose to maturity under their care, and as with many of the Primarchs, he in turn passed these through to his legion, and remained through to their status as a first founding chapter. The Salamanders are also known for several of their physical traits, their charcoal black skin, which often features scarification, their unsettling red eyes,
cool,
which is said to
though.
be due to the radiation of Nocturne. The planet itself is an alpha-class death world, meaning it should be entirely uninhabitable by humans, but its 7 cities were founded during the ancient times of humanity. Just how they came to be established is unknown, but they persist and enable human citizens to exist even now upon the world, which, whilst very dangerous, contains very valuable materials and minerals for the Imperium. While there are of course many interesting aspects to the Salamanders, one of their foundational philosophies is that of reincarnation, to which they refer to as the Circle of Fire. They believe that any who are given to the Earth of Nocturne, their essence will be remade anew. It's very likely that this belief has originated from their Primarch Vulcan, for he is what is known as a perpetual. Perpetuals are a very rare and unusual life form, and are in effect true immortals. The Emperor is another example of a perpetual, and there are others who have become known throughout the millennia for being so. Vulcan in his life suffered several brutal deaths, if you want to call them such, and he also is known to be able to regenerate his body, which not all perpetuals seem able to do. At one point during the heresy, he was tortured endlessly by Conrad Kurz of the Night Lords, who tried every possible means of killing Vulcan to no success. Ultimately becoming bored and in trying to break Vulcan, he presented him with a means to escape.
Whose frickin' Gary Stew is this? Whose self-insert?
Yeah, pretty much any time a perpetual comes out, it's a self-insert. Gary Stew moment.
Who's just like, okay, I'm gonna write about this space marine who's really cool. He likes fire. He's born on a fire planet.
He's a good guy too.
And he likes dragons and lizards and stuff, and it's gonna be called a salamander. But get this, my guy is also like the Emperor, because he doesn't die. But he's even cooler than the Emperor, because he also regenerates. like imagine that. Like listen to how that sounds out of context here. If it wasn't accepted by like the community as like
yeah, to an outsider, I definitely see that perspective happening.
Teleported away, appearing in the space above the Ultramarines' home planet of Macragge, burning up as he fell to the planet. But then he would suddenly regenerate his body.
Yeah.
But Vulcan has demonstrated his ability to return from death many times over, and is currently not even listed as one of the dead Primarchs, but as simply instead missing. Similarly to Lionel Johnson, Vulcan is one of the loyalist Primarchs who could, in fact, return to the Imperium at any time. More concerning are in fact the reasons as to why he has not done so far, especially considering the dire threats facing the Imperium. Spirituality is, as with many chapters, a core aspect of life for the Salamanders, and this can mean rituals or rites of passage that they must endure, which of course will extend to the recruitment of neophytes into the ranks of the chapter. Self-sufficiency is one of the tenets taught to recruit Salamanders, and so, as with many Astartes chapters, they must face endurance tests to the extreme, marches across ashen wastes, plains under burning suns, hunting hostile creatures of death worlds, and in one trial they must climb a sheer spear of volcanic rock. As noted, the Salamanders also partake in ritual scarification, usually under the instruction of a human bondsman known as a brander priest. For the veterans, they may even have branding atop older scars, creating very unusual patterns, to which they attribute additional deep meanings. Some may look upon this as horrific, but for the Salamanders there's a great honour and prestige in their markings. Few outside their number would even recognise or understand them. The Salamanders stand as a shining example of mankind. They have their own culture, they're selfless yet terrifying in battle. They balance the harsh judgments of war and the diplomatic needs of peacetime with expert judgment. They're master craftsmen, displaying proudly with their embellished and ornate armour and war gear. They're everything an ordinary human would expect an Astartes not to be. Thoughtful, introspective.
You could say that a lot of the chapters are technically selfless, though, if you think about it. Selfless just implies that you don't have any like goals for the self as in the person, and therefore you're following just the goals and aims of the chapter.
What they're pulling on specifically for the Salamanders a lot is that they actually care about humans, where a lot of the Astarte legions don't really care about civilians.
So more that they are there for humanity as a whole.
Yes, not just for the Astartes.
Okay.
And one of the really fun things about their portrayal is there's a dichotomy here where they are being shown as scarred up, burnt, crisped monsters. Like they brought up early in this description of how horrific they look. But then there are the friendly guys. These are the guys you want to go out with a beer with. They're the actual human ones. And
as long as you're human, right? As long as you're human.
As long as you're human, of course. That's always a consideration to this. But I just always, I love Salamanders. It's one of my 30k Horusy armies that I have.
Oh.
And it's because of the fact that, yes, they are the good guys, but they are depicted so, like, harshly.
Nice.
Yeah, their eyes glow red.
Glow red, wow. Good guys.
Spiritual and compassionate, yet when they must, the fires of the Drakes burn with such ferocity that they will incinerate the very worst horrors the galaxy can throw at them, leaving little more than ashes. A chosen successor for the Salamanders, the Black Dragons. Somewhat similarly to the Blood Angels, they seem to suffer a gene seed mutation. Their affliction produces bone protrusions on their heads and something akin to blades from the forearm and elbow. Within the Black Dragons, those who begin to exhibit these characteristics join their specialist unit, the Dragon Claws. The bones are then sharpened, even coated with adamantium to turn them into abhorrent close combat weapons. The forearm blades can be retracted into the claw's arm and then extended at will. More extreme mutations also can cause
I'm guessing there's like some form of chapters that are probably purists and think that any mutations of humanity are vile, I'm guessing.
Oh, definitely.
There's definitely a problem.
But, you know, when there's 10,000 people with guns between you and them, like...
rampant growth in the rest of the Marines' skeleton, meaning some of their number require customized power armor to fit their gargantuan frames. The Inquisition has, unsurprisingly, taken an interest here, and many speculate as to the origins of these mutations. Even more suspiciously is that when the usual 5% tithe of gene seed is requested, the Black Dragons have been known to resist this. But despite stringent testing, no abnormalities have so far been found, leading some to conclude that they have falsified the provided genetic material. But how this could be acquired remains a mystery. They had already been facing ever-increasing suspicion from Imperial authorities, and this is certainly nothing that's going to help quiet that down. But as has been so typical, the turmoil of the Great Rift's formation halted the Inquisition investigations into the Black Dragons.
The Raven Guard. We're gonna pause here and take a little 5-minute break here. I need to use the bathroom. You okay with that? We take a small break?
Yeah, let's go for it. Then we can learn about our edgelords.
Yeah, we can learn about our edgelords, the Raven Guard. BRB! Okay, we are back. Hi.
Hey.
Let me just check what we've got. Oh, those are all done, so I can do whoop. Back to normal. And now we are going to learn about the Raven Guard.
Then lastly, for this first video, the Raven Guard have always been fundamentally the masters of stealth and subterfuge. The Emperor always
Ooh,
employed
stealthy
the
boys.
Raven Guard in operations of infiltration, reconnaissance, pathfinding, and target acquisitions.
I don't understand how Space Marines can be stealthy, but you know, go off. Like
Yeah.
they pretty bulky, just saying.
Yeah. They take off their helmets
In
and
the
suddenly
times of
they're
the Crusade,
stealthier,
though,
okay?
things were not so clear, as perhaps they appear in M41. For example, during the Crusade, many human worlds were crushed when they refused to join the new Imperium of Mankind. Planets who resisted the will of the Emperor quickly found themselves facing the unconstrained power of the Astartes.
So what you're saying is Wisteria is fine because she's a girl, so she's not a red flag because she's super into Warhammer. Oxy.
I will agree Warhammer is a red flag too.
Oh, is it? Is it?
It is. But it's one of those ones where it's, you know, anyone gets into anything too much and it becomes an issue. So
Like I'd almost say feel like Magic the Gathering is more of a red flag.
yeah, just as much as Wilder. Anyone
And I
that's
feel
too
like it
into a video
depends
game.
on what portion of Warhammer you get really into, because like some of the people who paint the minis are like the nicest people I know, you know?
Actually, a lot of the Twitch community of painters, of Warhammer painters on Twitch here are actually just women painters that like painting the models. Don't touch the game, but just
From
paint
what
them.
I'm hearing though, Oxy, like you can't choose a good guy faction. They're all bad guys. So the reasoning for choosing them isn't because they're all genocidal. It's because you like a specific aspect or you like how the lore and plot is written. It's like when you choose to like a villain character from anime or superheroes or whatever. You don't like them because they're a villain. You like them because they're well written or well designed. You know?
My anime villains I have a crush on is a way bigger red flag than my Warhammer hobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So while some saw the Raven Guard striking from the shadows as masterful,
Oh, why haven't I heard anything about the rats?
Oh, they aren't really in Warhammer 40k. That's Warhammer Fantasy.
Oh, so it's like the before, like the earlier
Yeah,
stuff.
so they're in it. but
Did we
they're
kill
not
them
really-
all? Is that the simple answer?
Basically, yeah, there's like a human mod that are called ratlings that are kind of similar to them, but like there's a lot of
We killed all the rats.
there's
Gotcha.
basically no
We
skin.
killed all the rats.
tacticians to overwhelm an enemy before they had a chance to even form a proper defense, others saw them as little different than the so-called terror tactics used by the Night Lords. One of the most terrifying of Astartes' legions to face, in fact, during the Crusades, and who of course would later turn traitor. With the discovery of their Primarch Corax, all of this was set to change. They applied precise military pressure to vulnerable locations and targets. Their reputation as an infiltrating strike force grew such
Used to have
that
dwarfs
Horus
too?
frequently requested their assistance to assure victory. Corax never fully trusted his veteran warriors born of terror, as opposed to those native to his homeworld of deliverance. This also occurred in other Astartes legions like the Death Guard. But along with the Salamanders and Iron Hands, they would suffer greatly in the opening of the heresy and were already one of the smaller legions. Their numbers, though, were so severely diminished in the aftermath of this event, mainly due to the fact that their tactics of evasion, planning, surprise assaults were of little if any use when caught in the middle of a brutal ground war that amounted to basically an arena of slaughter. In the aftermath, the Raven Guard had been reduced from some 80,000 Marines to a mere 3,000.
Oh, that's a
But at least
huge...
Corax had survived the ordeal. Unsurprisingly, Corax was distraught and enraged, as were all the loyalists, and in order to rebuild his Astartes, he knew their gene seed alone would not be enough. He needed to travel back to Terra to seek the genetic secrets needed from the laboratories of the Emperor. But Terra at this time was significantly locked down by Rogel Dawn in preparation of the coming assault on the homeworld of humanity. Eventually, the Emperor reached out to allow Corax the access he needed to the labyrinthine mazes which held the secrets of the Astartes. Corax would retrieve the gene tech and return to the Raven Guard world deliverance, under guard by the Custodes and the orders of Malcador the Sigillite.
Custodes?
Astartes are like super space marines that are the Emperor's personal guard.
Okay. The gold ones? Those are the gold ones, right?
The gold ones.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
The Emperor's closest aide and effectively his herald much of the time. With the new gene seed, the Raven Guard would develop new Astartes that were imbued with the strength of their Primarch. These massively powerful Astartes could kill veteran Marines with ease, and as rumours of the Raven Guard's regeneration spread, it attracted the attention of the Alpha Legion. They would infiltrate and poison this new gene seed with a demonic spike, causing horror.
But the Emperor said it was fine. Why you do that? What's the Alpha
Chaos.
Legion? Are they bad? Wait, are they the Chaos?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
bad. Okay. Or like, not okay. I know I keep saying good and bad. Okay, they are not loyal to the Emperor. They're traitors. They're heretics.
horrifying mutations.
Okay.
The consequences of this were devastating, and the Alpha Legion also managed to extract the pure tech for themselves, so it was a deeply troubling time. The Raven Guard though still struggled on, making some impact against the traitors, but with only some 4,000 Astartes, nothing more than
Alpha
selecting
Legion
targets they could
traitor,
cause
gotcha.
hindrance with by destroying and generally just hunting down traitors.
Yes
were
and no.
all they were
You
capable.
can't just say yes and no. Alpha Legion traitors are not.
That is actually a yes and no.
Oh, damn it! Right, it all gotta be so confusing. Is it like one of those, like most people would believe them to be traitors, but they themselves don't believe themselves to be traitors or something like that?
There's situations like that too, but
They're not
the
loyal to the
loyalty
Emperor,
and-
they're loyal to the Imperium. But
So-
that doesn't make sense.
Of at this time. When finally the heresy was over, the second founding would
The heresy is never over.
at least place them back on a level playing field with their fellow first founding chapters also being adapted to this new size of 1,000 Astartes. But Corvus Corax, the Primarch of the Raven Guard, was racked with guilt at his failures. At Isfahan, the diminished role of the Raven Guard in the heresy, the corruption and failure of the Gene Seed project. He would lock himself away to repent in the Raven Spire, the vast tower.
Oh, he's brooding.
His
He's
spire.
brooding. He's so edgy. He's like, I'm just gonna lock myself away and repent.
On the homeworld of Deliverance, until one day he disappeared into the Eye of Terror, the Warp, to hunt down the traitors and their Primarchs, but in time he's said to have become mutated by the Warp, turning him into a being of darkness. His final
No! He got too emo!
recorded fight is with Lorgar of the
That's
Word
the
Bearers,
crow.
and
Yeah,
Corax
there's like a crow on him and everything. Oh, is it supposed to be a raven
guard.
though? Because raven.
It's the raven.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the crow. It's so much. Just the
Yeah,
family,
yeah.
as far as anybody knows, remains in the Warp, but it's unknown if he could ever return now.
So I noticed like they always make the Astartes the nine dudes. Why are they all hot?
Armor?
Like most of them are hot. Why they always draw them really hot?
That's just how it is.
It's
you
just
know,
how
they're
you're
just-
Okay. So Warhammer dudes in chat. Which of the Legionnaires are you gay for? Which one? Which if you had to call one of them daddy, which one? Which one? Who is daddy? Ganon? Hello, Prof. Happy. But called dad. Horus? Horus! Pre-heresy. Okay, pre-heresy Horus. Okay. Jacketai. What about you? What's your top Wisteria? Who's daddy for you?
No. Well,
If you
okay,
had to keep in mind, it is kind of gay because you're choosing one of these guys to take his seat. You're choosing one of them to take his seat. Daddy Gilly Man.
Yeah, it's Daddy Fulgrim for me.
Fulgrim, okay. Which one? Which legion or
She's
chapter is
the
that?
Emperor's Children.
The Emperor's Children. Oh, okay. Ooh.
Yes. Who fell to Slanesh?
I haven't seen all of them, but so far, Daddy Sanguine Sanguina.
Yeah.
So far,
good
so
choice.
far, so far. You know. That's the one that turns slave into. Oh wait, no, what? You guys.
Yeah.
You love their
The
colors.
Raven Guard remain in the period of M41, a chapter known for their use of stealth assaults. They're not a
Wait, it's Ghost! Look, it's Ghost! It's Ghost! It's baby girl over there.
grinding force who battle through with bitter endurance, but in the time since the heresy and especially the contemporary era, they have many tools at their disposal, especially now with the primaris. Unlike other chapters, the Raven Guard were already used to the idea of replacements coming in after the horrifying losses that they suffered, and so they make good use of these new vanguard units such as
Yes, we've got a cute little Slaneshi over here, right?
Yes.
primaris infiltrators and suppressors. They also use a decentralized command structure, as was illustrated by Korax himself, and this enables their units to remain flexible so as to conceal themselves.
But you know, I'm sure you guys can guess, like you can guess which chaos guide I'm aligned with, right? Right?
As necessary, or strike when an unexpected opportunity presents itself. They're able to make decisions much more in the moment than other structures within the Imperium who require continual chain of command.
No! Frick you! Not Nurgle! Not Nurgle!
Mean.
That is mean. Just because I'm occasionally stinky does not mean I embrace the stinky or want to be stinky. I enjoy showers. I just take a bit to get to them sometimes, you know?
Proven. Although the Raven Guard do adhere to the Codex Astartes, their nature and history mean they rarely fight as a company. They instead deploy in what they refer to as talons, small, fast-moving strike forces, often from the air. The size of this talon can vary depending on the specific task at hand. As a chapter, they have adapted significantly from their origins, and instead of being crippled and broken by the devastation they suffered at the drop...
No. It's not lazy, it's like...
Executive function.
Yeah, it's that, but to explain it, it's like, I have so many other things to do, and then it just takes me... It's like, you know how you, like, you want to go to the gym, but the hardest part to go to the gym is like getting there. But once you're at the gym, you're fine and you're enjoying it and you're pumping iron or something like that. It's like that, but with showering. And sometimes it's just like a matter of like I'll like, and I'm not saying like I'm the type of person who waits a week or like that. I'm just saying like it'll be like, oh yeah, I went to shower yesterday, but then I end up showering the next day because I didn't find the time or like go do it. But if I notice I'm stinky or like I actually like super need a shower, I'll go take it right away. It's just that sometimes I'll put it off like 1 day or 2 days. Like it's that kind of level of not showering. And that's just like I'm busy doing stuff and I know that I am very meticulous with my shower routine, so I know I take a long time cuz it depends. If I'm taking just like an emergency, like I feel sweaty and shower, then it's like, you know, just a body shower. But as a girl who has long hair, like if I take like a normal shower, there we go, long hair, thanks. As a girl with long hair, I'm gonna take at least like a 20 to 30 minute shower. I'm gonna need to like brush my hair in the shower, shampoo, conditioner, sometimes, you know, like exfoliate my skin, etc. And then I'm also the type of person who just enjoys the shower. The hot, warm water feels nice once I'm in there. And then I'm like, oh, I don't want to get out. It's gonna be cold when I get out. And then also I'm jamming out to music because I like to put on my music when I shower too. So yeah, it's basically at least an hour lost. And then you have at least like a half hour after you get out and I'm just like, yeah, I just want to lay on my bed and dry off for a bit, you know? And then like on top of that, now that I'm out of the shower with wet hair, I have to do my hair. too, on top of that, because if I just let my hair like dry naturally, it's gonna get messy really quick. So I gotta make sure I like either braid it back or use product or something like that. So yeah, well, yeah, lucky you. Glad your shower takes 5 minutes. Good for you. Good for you. Wow.
Topside Massacre, the Raven Guard have remained flexible and adaptive. Any squad or strike team are capable of adapting to an unfolding situation.
That is Ghost
The loss
again! Look!
to the commander will often have little direct consequence as to the
Baby
completion
girl.
of the mission, and this gives them immense tactical freedom. The lesson learned from their Legion and Chapter is one of hope and struggle, of determination and strategic mastery. The Raven Guard are representative of the best of humanity. They're
That's a
intuitive,
cool
creative,
armor.
unbreakable, and aspirational. They endure, so must we all, in the name of the Emperor.
We enter.
For a successor chapter of the Raven Guard, I will look to the Raptors, who began life as, in fact, a Raven Guard company before the second founding, comprised of new Marines training on the homeworld of Deliverance. And this was before the outbreak even of the heresy and the massacre they would suffer at Isfahan. After serving with distinction, the company was honoured as a chapter, and the Raptors were created during the second founding as dictated by Guilliman. The Raptors began as a fleet-based chapter hunting down the forces of the traitor legions, as did so many successors in the aftermath, the scouring of the heresy. The Raptors were later issued with a homeworld near the Eye of Terror, but this was reported as later being destroyed somewhere between M34 and M36. They were suspected themselves as being destroyed as a chapter, but would reappear around M39 with a new homeworld. They've participated in many notable engagements, which are worth looking at probably later down the line, including the Badab War and the Third War of the legendary world.
You guys,
of
one of you guys were talking about Badab War in chat earlier. I remember that. Badab.
They follow many of the principles from the Raven Guard in their battle tactics, with a strong sense of independent flexibility for units, as well as strong use of scouts,
Probably you say a lot of
infiltration
things.
teams, fast vehicles like land speeders. But one of the unusual aspects of the Raptors is that they have been seen to use a range of Warzone-specific camouflage, something very uncommon with the Astartes. Usually Astartes want to be seen, for they know no fear. They wear bright yellows, reds, blues. They feel their presence alone should intimidate an enemy. But for those like the Raptors, they place...
These guys actually look stealthy, unlike the Raven.
Yes.
The Raven Guard. These guys look like their armor and stuff was made for stealth. But then again, I think it also would depend on the planet and environment you're in, right?
Yeah, and just like the different like policies and that of it. So,
but cloak, sniper rifle, like flora on top of the stuff to make it hide,
Success above such symbolic gestures, and if adjusting their battle plate for specific conditions is appropriate, then they will definitely do so.
Yes, but Corvus is cheating. Adapted.
Now, this was only the first episode in this series. Part 2 already nearly complete, and I plan on following this up very shortly, where we look at the remaining loyalists, the White Scars, Imperial Fists, Ultramarines, and the Space Wolves. And after that, we'll move on to begin the deeper dives into these chapters, for there is much more detail to uncover. The Astartes, the Space Marines, are forever the Emperor's angels. They protect humanity from the very worst horrors of the galaxy, and in the face of those enemies, they show no fear. They are the Emperor's very will, made from the very worst horrors of the galaxy, and in the face of those enemies...
Just double checking I wasn't seeing white cross on red background,
They show
or red
no
cross
fear.
on white background?
They are
Because,
the
you know
Emperor's
how
very
that's,
will
illegal
made
video
manifest.
games?
Yeah.
The progenitor
that was
chapters
not
who
one that
survived the heresy
It's
carried
close,
an immense
it's
burden
close,
upon their
but-
shoulders. The fact that they have all survived the past 10,000 years to M41, despite being nearly destroyed
The new
many
video
times,
game ones have
is an
usually been
astonishing
like
achievement in itself.
green med kits with white crosses on them nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
But
a
the
Geneva
Imperium is facing some of the darkest times since brother turned against brother during the heresy. The Imperium is divided. Roboto Guilliman and now Lionel Johnson have returned to lead humanity. The Mechanicus have provided the Astartes with new flesh and material to fight back against the traitors and the nightmares that pour forth from the warp and the Great Rift. But nothing is certain. The galaxy burns. Imperium Sanctus and Imperium Nihilus are besieged. Worlds and entire systems are ravaged by war. The soldiers of humanity are spread thinly as ever. Lines break, stands are made, worlds hold out in the hope of relief. The spirit of humanity cannot easily be extinguished, and rumours continue to swirl around the Emperor himself. Psykers in the Rift are whispered to be empowering the master of mankind, but few dare to even speculate about what this could mean. So join me soon as we continue the exploration of the Astartes chapters, our final thought for today from the Avenging Sun himself. Robute Gilliman stated that a message of constructive optimism in such bleak times. Robute Gilliman stated that our destiny lies not in surrender but in conquest, not in retreat but in relentless advance, not in failure but in victory, and the survival of the Emperor's realm.
Uncle Gilly. Has there ever been any Warhammer movies?
Fan movies, and there is soon, I believe it's on Amazon, there's a part of a mini series about a bunch of different fandoms. There's an episode of Warhammer, but there's there was supposed to be, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, Amazon TV series that was done by the Witcher guy for a full Warhammer 40K movie.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
The one thing I find happens with like a decent amount of like video games when they get made into movies is they kind of try to give it the Hollywood movie treatment instead of just taking like the source material and like or telling the game studio itself to, hey, instead of doing all these cutscenes in a game, just make a full movie at the quality of the cutscenes, because I feel like that'd be like really good to see like a game do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they've been hesitant on the movie IP for
because like
Warhammer,
think of World of Warcraft. I hear like the movie was not that great. I didn't hear any much about the Warcraft movie, but if they had done it, like if Blizzard had made it with the level of like some of like the like higher end cutscenes that they do these days, like imagine how insane that'd be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of the fandoms that when it's not treated right, it will be really, really rejected loudly.
I mean, we saw how. I mean, you probably heard how bad the Borderlands movie turned out.
And like, I don't think people are gonna play Borderlands 4.
Yeah, it's that bad that it's like it's making the IP look worse than it is.
Yeah.
Like so I don't know, like for some reason Hollywood keeps on trying to cater to like a new audience instead of the original audience that is like linked to that IP for some reason, and it just doesn't work out that way. I'm kind of worried about the Minecraft movie, even in that sense, with what they've done with it. The only thing that's saving it for me is the fact that Jack Black's in it, you know? Did you see the trailer?
Yeah, it's a thing. I'm not...
It just feels like they're almost doing like a Jumanji kind of thing with it. Like, I don't know. But
yeah, I get them having fun with it, but like, I don't know if that's what people want.
They're doing the whole like, oh, family friendly, this family... who has like some sort of relationship conflict gets thrown into this mystical. It's an isekai. It's basically an isekai. It's a Western, shitty, family friendly movie isekai is what it is. And it looks
totally.
And it doesn't make me like happy to see that. Like it should have. You can't isekai Minecraft. That's what they did though. They're like. That's what the trailer is implying. Is they're like, where are we? And then Jack Black's like, I'm Steve, and like, and I'm just like, what the frick is this? I mean, I personally don't mind the animation style of the mobs and stuff they do. It still looks blocky and like Minecraft, for the most part. It's just weird when it's mixed with like IRL actors. I'm just gonna bring up the trailer here so we can watch that. Dun, 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 dun. Minecraft movie trailer. Has 17 million views, so that would be it. Like, I feel like they should have given it the Super Mario treatment, but they didn't. They're like, oh no, we really want to show Jack Black, not just Jack Black voice acting, even though he's done an incredible job voice acting animated films in the last while. You know, like what? I don't know. You guys can form your own opinion as well here. I'm just gonna crank up the quality. It looks so badly green screen too. Not badly, but like you just tell that's how they did it.
What the hell?
Anything you can dream about here, you can make.
Who are you?
I am Steve. Okay.
This guy is such a tool bag.
Like I already want to punch that chick for calling Jack Black a tool bag. The llama's cute. But like already we're seeing like what the main plot is with the piglins being up on the surface. Like that's probably the plain plot. Is that like, oh no, the people from the you know, we got the people from the
so we've kind of already had a Minecraft movie before. We had 2 seasons of the Telltale Games Minecraft.
Oh, did we?
Which even was released.
I never heard about that.
Yeah. It was released on Netflix, and you would do the choice of what like you do in that decision, like just on your remote, on just watching Netflix there. And what they did is they didn't have any of this like isekai anything. They just had it be where, oh, these are 4 adventurers who are gathering the stones of power in Minecraft, and just told a story in the Minecraft engine.
Interesting.
And I feel like that's more what people want than this.
Well, like I said, I don't mind like the way like if we ignore the IRL people in this and we can like we look at like how the world looks, like this looks really good. Like that looks really cool. Still looks like Minecraft. Like even the style the houses are built, it doesn't look like not Minecraft. Like if we look at this part here. Sure, it's a little bit zany, but they also kept with the blocky. It doesn't look too it's not like it's not like the first iteration of the Sonic movie like bad. It's more like the second iteration bad, if that makes sense. Like they didn't take too many artistic liberties like with the shape and like, but they still did the realism twist on it. I feel like they maybe could have gone for more of like a, I don't know, it feels like a Minecraft Pixar to me, which isn't too bad. It's not the worst.
It's
like they could have pushed the realism further and give them not square eyes, and then that would look really bad, if that makes sense, you know?
There's probably a version on the cutting room floor like that.
There probably is, and that makes it really scary to think about. But like, look at the houses and the trees in the back. That looks good. It just looks incredibly uncanny seeing like the people in this like beginning part here. Like it just like this scene right here looks so green screened. This looks so like even like the depth of this scene does not look correct. With with the tree there too. Like maybe that's supposed to be a bush. That might be supposed to be a bush. But this doesn't look right. Those flowers should be smaller that are beside her there too.
It just doesn't look good in it. Like this shot specifically.
It looks very disconnected, yeah. But like if we took the people out of the picture, like look at that. You can see the lava and the mountains, and it looks like Minecraft when it's got a really good mod on it, right? It looks like Minecraft with a really good mod. And that's not bad. That's not bad. Like I said, It might not be good. But you know what was good? You know what was good? I watched the new Deadpool movie in theaters, and that was fucking good. I haven't watched a movie in theaters that I was that happy with in a long time. Like, I just feel like a lot of the Hollywood movies that have been in theaters have been kind of meh lately.
I don't think I've actually seen a movie in theaters since Deadpool 2.
Oh, well, you know what? That's fair. I think it was better than Deadpool 2. Arguably, I don't know if it was better than Deadpool 1. No spoilers, don't worry. No spoilers. It's still a very new movie. I'm gonna move us over here. Oh, yeah, I guess we could be here. I usually go to the other one, but, you know, you can hang out in my room. That's cool. You can go hang out. Right. Oh, no, actually, not behind chat. There we go. And then I will move over here. There we go. There you go. You just hang out on my desk.
It's just like real life.
Yeah. Oh, whoops. I accidentally deleted. I did not mean to delete you. I'm so sorry. It's your thing was so big that it was like going towards the trash can accidentally. Did not mean to do that. Sorry.
Oh no.
Oh no. We're good now though. Daijoubu. I meant to turn on the BGM. There we go. BGM is on. I think. Yeah, we're good. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with Saria and doing Warhammer lore. I am going to be playing Space Marine 2 tomorrow. Let's go.
That'd be so fun.
Yeah, so like that's why today we were wanting to go through the lore. So I feel like I don't feel like I know nothing going in. So I'm glad I did some lore. I might explore some more of it on my own later at some point. But
with
yeah.
hours of lore dump, what did you feel was your favorite part of it?
My favorite part of it. What stood out a lot? Well, I really want to learn about those females like that were teased at me during one of the smaller videos. You weren't here for that. I want to learn about the sister.
Adepta Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle. That's my army that I collect in person,
I'm also excited to learn more about the Ultramarines and the Adeptus Mechanicus. I think just the whole like concept of the God Emperor and stuff is just very, very interesting in general. I just want to know more of the details because a lot of it seems to be like shrouded in like mystery and stuff. I know that's on purpose, but you know, it's very interesting.
No, I'm glad you enjoyed your deep dive.
Yeah. Thank you for those who are here, especially those of you who are very active in chat and answering questions and giving input. I really appreciate that. Also, thank you to anyone who we had a few resubs today. We had some amazing raids. We hung out with Manager and a few other talents. It was a very good, I'd say productive day, and I'm looking forward to spending some time together tomorrow. Yeah. We are gonna get our raid ready here, and I'm gonna find someone for us to raid. So give me a moment here. Let's see who's streaming right now. Oh, you know what? Hades Mythos had their 2.0 debut, so let's go raid Hades, okay? Get your raid messages ready here. There we go. And once again, thank you for hanging out. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever it is. Remember that Oneesan cares about you very much, so make sure you take good care of yourself while I'm gone. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye. Boop.